5:47 in the morning. That's when Ethan Brooks found his grandfather dead. The barn door was already open when he arrived, which was strange because Walter never left doors open. Waste of electricity, he'd say. Waste of heat in winter. Waste of cool air in summer. A man who'd lived through the Depression didn't waste anything. Ethan walked in slowly. The overhead lights were on, fluorescent tubes humming their eternal song. The smell hit him first. Motor oil. Grease. That particular scent of diesel fuel that never quite leaves a working barn. And underneath it all, something else. Something wrong. He found Walter under the John Deere 4020. Not slumped, not collapsed, just lying there on the creeper like he'd decided to take a nap mid-repair. His right hand still gripped a 3/4-inch wrench. His left hand rested on his chest, eyes closed, face peaceful. Ethan knelt down beside the creeper. Didn't rush. Didn't panic. Checked for a pulse at the wrist first, then the neck. Nothing. The skin was still warm, though, not hot, just warm, like Walter had only been gone a few minutes. He looked up at the tractor's undercarriage. The clutch assembly hung there, freshly installed. New bolts gleaming silver against old cast iron. Every bolt torqued to spec, Ethan could tell just by looking. Walter had finished the job, completed what he'd started. Then his heart had simply stopped. Ethan reached over and gently removed the wrench from Walter's hand. The old man's fingers didn't want to let go at first, rigor mortis starting to set in. But Ethan was patient. He worked the fingers loose, one at a time, careful not to bend them. When the wrench finally came free, he set it on the workbench. 3/4-inch. Craftsman. Made in 1967, the year Ethan's father was born. He didn't call 911 right away. Just sat there on the concrete floor, next to his grandfather's body. The barn was quiet except for the fluorescent hum and the distant sound of cattle lowing in the east pasture. Dust motes floated in the early morning light coming through the high windows. On the workbench, Walter's coffee sat in an old Folgers can. The can had been converted into a mug decades ago, handle welded on by Walter himself. The coffee was cold now, chin forming on top. Next to it, a Romeo y Julieta cigar rested in a tin ashtray. Still had about a third left. Walter only smoked on special occasions. Finishing a difficult repair qualified. Ethan picked up the cigar. Brought it to his nose. Cedar. Tobacco. The faint smell of Walter's old spice cologne that clung to everything the old man touched. He set it back down exactly where it had been. You finished the job, didn't you, old man? The words stayed in his head. Didn't say them out loud. Walter wouldn't have wanted sentiment. Just acknowledgement. Respect for work completed. 20 minutes passed before Ethan finally stood up and pulled out his phone. He dialed 911, told the dispatcher what he'd found. Yes, he was sure. No, he didn't need instructions on CPR. The man had been dead for at least 30 minutes, probably longer. No, there was no emergency. Just send someone when they could. He ended the call and looked around the barn. 50 years of Walter's life lived in this space. Tools organized on pegboard walls. Shadow outlines showing where each tool belonged. Not a single tool out of place except the wrench Ethan had just removed from Walter's hand. The floor swept clean. Oil stains, sure, but clean. No trash, no clutter. Everything had its place, and everything was in its place. In the corner, a radio played. AM station, news and weather. Walter always kept it on. Said silence made a man think too much. And too much thinking led to dwelling on things you couldn't change. Ethan walked over and turned it off. The silence felt right. 3 weeks later, Ethan sat in a church pew wearing his father's flannel shirt. He'd ironed it that morning, carefully pressing each crease, making sure it looked presentable. The shirt was 30 years old, faded blue and gray plaid. Thomas Brooks had worn it every Sunday for years before he died. Now Ethan wore it when things mattered. First Baptist Church in Fredericksburg. White walls, high ceiling, stained glass windows showing scenes from the Bible that Ethan had stared at since he was a boy. He knew every panel. Noah's Ark, David and Goliath, Jesus on the cross, the prodigal son returning home. 247 people filled the pews. Ethan had counted them when he arrived. Old habit. Walter taught him to notice details. How many people, where the exits were, who looked comfortable and who looked like they wanted to be somewhere else. Of the 247, Ethan personally knew maybe 12. Old farmers who'd worked with Walter decades ago. Veterans from the VFW hall where Walter played poker every Thursday, Doc Martinez and his daughter Maria from the garage in town, a few others. The rest were strangers, well-dressed strangers, people in expensive suits and designer dresses. They looked somber. They dabbed at their eyes with handkerchiefs. They hugged each other in that theatrical way people do at funerals when they want others to see how affected they are. Ethan recognized some of them. Family, extended family. People who shared Walter's blood but not his values. They'd flown in from California, from New York, from Chicago. Cities where people measured worth in dollars and square footage instead of integrity and craftsmanship. Victoria Sterling sat 3 pews ahead. Walter's granddaughter, 38 years old, lawyer at some big firm in Austin. She wore a black Armani suit that probably cost $3,000. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a perfect bun. Diamond earrings caught the light every time she moved her head. She was crying or pretending to cry. Hard to tell from behind. Next to her sat Derek Sterling, 41, investment banker. Slicked back hair, Rolex on his wrist that cost more than Ethan's truck. He kept checking his phone during the service, subtle about it, holding it low. But Ethan saw, everyone saw. Derek just didn't care. Richard Brooks sat in the front pew. Walter's only living son, Ethan's uncle technically, though they'd met maybe 4 times in Ethan's entire life. Richard had moved to San Francisco 30 years ago to work in tech, made millions in the dot-com boom, bought a house in Pacific Heights, sent Christmas cards every year with photos of his renovated Victorian and his yoga instructor wife. Never called, never visited, just sent cards. He looked older now, 65, gray hair perfectly styled, expensive but casual. That California rich look where people spent $500 to look like they'd just thrown something on. He wasn't crying, just sat there staring at Walter's casket, expression unreadable. Patricia Morgan hadn't come. Walter's daughter. She'd sent flowers. An enormous arrangement that cost probably $800. The card read, "Cannot attend due to prior commitments. My heart is with you all." Prior commitments. Walter's funeral was a prior commitment. That told Ethan everything he needed to know about Patricia. The pastor finished his eulogy. Generic words about a man he'd met maybe twice. Good Christian, pillar of the community, generous spirit, beloved father and grandfather. The kind of things pastors say when they don't actually know the deceased. Fill time with pleasantries. Make everyone feel better about death by pretending it was part of some grand plan. Walter would have hated it. Then Victoria stood up to speak. She walked to the podium with perfect posture, heels clicking on the tile floor. She had notes, actual notes on cream-colored stationery. She unfolded them carefully and began to read. My grandfather was an extraordinary man, a visionary, an entrepreneur who built something from nothing. His business acumen was unmatched. His investment strategies were forward-thinking. His estate planning showed a mind that understood wealth preservation and generational transfer of assets. Ethan's jaw tightened. She kept talking. 8 minutes of corporate buzzwords and financial terminology. She made Walter sound like a hedge fund manager. Never once mentioned that he was a mechanic. Never said he could rebuild a transmission blindfolded. Never talked about the barn or the smell of motor oil or the way he could diagnose an engine problem just by listening to it idle. She talked about a stranger. When she finished, people applauded. Actually applauded at a funeral. Victoria smiled, gracious, humble. She walked back to her pew and Derek squeezed her hand, supportive, united. Ethan wanted to stand up, wanted to walk to that podium and tell them who Walter really was. Tell them about the man who taught a 12-year-old boy how to gap spark plugs after his father died. The man who sat on the porch every evening drinking Lone Star beer and telling stories about the ranch in its glory days. The man who wore the same coveralls for 40 years because they still worked just fine and buying new ones was wasteful. But he didn't stand up. Walter wouldn't have wanted a scene. So Ethan sat there in his father's flannel shirt and let them bury a man they never knew. The graveside service was brief, more generic words. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. The casket lowered into Texas soil next to Walter's wife Margaret, who'd died 15 years earlier. Next to Thomas, who'd been there since 1994. 3 headstones now, 3 generations of Brooks family. Walter, Margaret, Thomas. Soon there would be 4. Ethan would be the last. No wife, no kids, no one to carry on the name. People filed past the grave. dropped flowers, said quiet words, shook hands with Richard, hugged Victoria, ignored Ethan. He stood off to the side, watching, always watching. Derek and Victoria left early, had to catch a flight back to Austin. Important meetings tomorrow. They offered quick condolences to Richard and walked to their rental car, a black Mercedes S-Class. Derek drove. Victoria was on her phone before they even left the cemetery. Richard approached Ethan after everyone else had left. "I'm sorry for your loss." The words hung in the air, formal, distant. Ethan nodded. "Thank you." Richard looked like he wanted to say more. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Finally, he talked about you near the end. Said you were the only one who visited. Ethan didn't respond. Richard cleared his throat. "The will reading is in 3 weeks. Patterson's office in Austin. You'll be there?" "I'll be there." "Good, good." Richard shuffled his feet, expensive Italian shoes sinking slightly into the cemetery grass. "I should get back to the hotel. Early flight tomorrow." He walked away without shaking hands. Ethan stood alone at the grave for another hour. The sun climbed higher. Temperature rose. Texas heat settling in for the day. 94 degrees by noon. Cicadas started their screaming song. He knelt down and placed his hand on the fresh dirt. Didn't say anything, just knelt there. Then he stood up and walked back to his truck. A memory hit him on the drive home. Summer of 1908. Ethan was 6 years old. Thomas was still alive. They were all at the ranch, Walter's place. 40 acres of scrub land and cattle and machinery that barely worked. Ethan remembered standing in the barn. Hot. So hot. No air conditioning, just box fans pushing warm air around. Thomas and Walter were bent over an engine, a small block Chevy 283, pulled from some old pickup truck. "Close your eyes, son," Thomas's voice. "What do you hear?" Ethan had closed his eyes, listened. "I hear clicking." "That's the valves. They're talking to you." "Listen closer." "What are they saying?" "I don't know." Walter had laughed, not mocking, kind, teaching. "They're saying they need adjustment. Hear that tap, tap, tap? Too much clearance. We need to tighten them down. 0.018 inch. No more, no less." "How do you know?" Ethan had asked. "Because we listen." Thomas knelt down to Ethan's level. A real man listens before he acts. Tools are just extensions of your hands. But your ears? They tell you the truth. Engines don't lie, people lie. But engines, they tell you exactly what's wrong if you're willing to listen. Walter had nodded. "Your daddy's right. You want to be a good mechanic? First rule, listen. Second rule, measure twice, cut once. Third rule, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And fourth rule, most important, always finish what you start." 20-year-old memory, clear as yesterday. Ethan pulled into his apartment complex, 4-story building, 18 units. His was on the 3rd floor. Number 32, 400 square feet, $850 a month. Plumbing that leaked. Air conditioning that worked when it felt like it. Neighbors who fought at 2 in the morning. He climbed the stairs, unlocked his door, stood in the doorway looking at his life. Couch from Goodwill, TV from a garage sale, kitchen table with 3 chairs because one broke and he'd never replaced it. Bed in the corner of the studio. No bedroom, no privacy. Just one open space that served as living room and bedroom and kitchen and everything else. On the counter, a stack of mail. Bills mostly. Student loans from trade school. Credit card payments. Electric. Water. Internet. On the wall, one photograph. The only decoration in the entire apartment. Black and white. 3 men standing in front of a 1967 Chevrolet pickup truck. Walter. Walter's father. Thomas at age 5. 3 generations of Brooks men. The truck in the photo was Gulf blue. Ethan remembered that truck. Remembered riding in it. Remembered the smell of the vinyl seats. Remembered his father letting him shift gears while Thomas worked the clutch. Remembered the accident. September 17th, 1994. Saturday afternoon, 2:47 p.m. Ranch Road 12, heading back from town. Thomas was driving. Ethan was in the passenger seat. No seatbelt. Nobody wore seatbelts in pickup trucks back then. Just sat there with the window down and the wind in your face. The drunk driver came from nowhere. Crossed the center line doing 70 and a 45. Ford F-250. Brown. Rust on the fender. Ethan remembered these details with perfect clarity. The license plate, the crack in the windshield, the driver's face. Older man, 50, maybe. Eyes closed. Asleep at the wheel. Thomas saw it half a second before impact. Enough time to react, not enough time to avoid it. He grabbed Ethan, pushed him down, covered him with his body. The F-250 hit driver's side, metal tearing, glass exploding. The sound of it, that sound, like the world ending. Loud, then quiet. Ethan had opened his eyes, found himself on the floor of the truck. Thomas on top of him. Heavy, not moving. Dad? No response. Dad? Still nothing. Ethan tried to move. Couldn't. Thomas's weight pinned him down. He pushed, struggled, finally got out from under his father. Thomas was staring at the roof, eyes open, blood on his face, chest crushed where the door had caved in. He was still breathing, barely. Shallow gasps, his lips moved. Stay down. That's what he was trying to say. Even dying, he was trying to protect his son. Stay down. Ethan held his father's hand, squeezed it. Dad, help is coming. Just hold on. Thomas's eyes found Ethan's, focused for a moment, then went distant. He died 6 minutes after impact. That's what the paramedics told Walter later. 6 minutes of holding on, 6 minutes of fighting, 6 minutes of trying to stay alive for his son. But 6 minutes wasn't enough. Ethan walked away with a broken arm and nightmares that lasted years. Thomas went in a body bag. The insurance company totaled the truck. State Farm cut a check for $8,000. The truck went to Mel's Salvage in Lockhart. Crushed, recycled, gone. Or so Ethan thought. He shook off the memory, forced himself back to the present. The apartment, the bills, the life he'd built on minimum wage and long hours. Tomorrow he'd go back to work. Martinez Automotive, small shop on the east side of Austin. Doc Martinez and his daughter Maria ran it together. They paid him $15 an hour under the table. Cash, no benefits, no insurance, just work and money and the satisfaction of fixing things. It was honest work. Walter would have approved. 3 weeks passed, life continued. Work, sleep, the rhythm of existence without purpose. Then the letter came. Patterson and Associates, law firm in downtown Austin, expensive letterhead, heavy paper stock. Dear Mr. Brooks, you are hereby notified of the reading of the last will and testament of Walter Henry Brooks, deceased. Your presence is requested at our offices on June 15th at 2:00 p.m. Please bring valid identification. Sincerely, Samuel Patterson Escrow. Ethan read it twice, set it on the counter, stared at it. He knew what the will would say, knew what he'd get. Nothing. Walter had other family, successful family with college degrees and careers and lives that mattered. Ethan was just the grandson who worked with his hands, the one who never made anything of himself. The mechanic. Why would Walter leave him anything? June 15th arrived. Ethan took the afternoon off work. Doc and Maria understood, told him to take whatever time he needed. They were good like that, one of the few good families left. Ethan showered, shaved, put on the cleanest jeans he owned, dark blue Wranglers. Bought them 3 years ago, wore them maybe 10 times, saved them for important occasions. He put on his father's flannel shirt, the same one from the funeral, ironed it again, carefully. His boots were Red Wing Iron Rangers, 8 years old, worn but maintained. He'd cleaned them the night before, oiled the leather, polished the toe caps. They weren't dress shoes, but they were respectful. The drive to downtown Austin took 40 minutes. Traffic was heavy, always was. City had grown too fast. Too many people, too many cars, not enough infrastructure. Patterson and Associates occupied the 14th floor of a glass tower on Congress Avenue. Ethan parked in a garage 3 blocks away. $8 for the first hour. Highway robbery, but necessary. He rode the elevator up, checked his reflection in the polished brass doors, looked out of place. Man in work clothes surrounded by lawyers and businessmen in $1,000 suits. The elevator doors opened. Patterson and Associates. Reception area done in mahogany and leather. Abstract art on the walls. The kind that cost $50,000 but looked like something a child made. Floor-to-ceiling windows showing the Austin skyline. Ethan approached the receptionist. Young woman, professional, expensive suit, hair perfect, makeup perfect, everything perfect. I'm here for the reading of Walter Brooks's will. She smiled, polite but distant. Name? Ethan Brooks. She typed on her computer. 1 moment, please. She picked up a phone. Mr. Brooks is here for the 2 o'clock. Yes, I'll send him back. She hung up and gestured down a hallway. Conference room B, 3rd door on the right. Mr. Patterson is expecting you. Ethan walked down the hallway. His boots made no sound on the thick carpet. Everything in this place was designed to absorb sound, to make people feel small, to remind them that law and money and power existed here, and they were just visitors. He found conference room B, opened the door. 12 people sat around a long table. Mahogany, same as the reception desk, leather chairs, same as the waiting room. Everything matched, everything coordinated, everything expensive. Victoria sat at the far end, same black suit from the funeral, or maybe a different one, hard to tell. Rich people had multiple versions of the same outfit. She was reviewing documents, didn't look up when Ethan entered. Derek sat next to her, typing on his phone, also didn't look up. Richard sat across from them. He did look up, nodded at Ethan, brief acknowledgement, nothing more. Other family members Ethan barely knew filled the remaining seats. Cousins, second cousins, people who shared Walter's blood but not his life. At the head of the table sat Samuel Patterson, 68 years old, silver hair, expensive suit, the kind of lawyer who charged $800 an hour and worth every penny. He stood when Ethan entered. "Mr. Brooks, please have a seat." He gestured to an empty chair near the middle of the table. Ethan sat. The leather chair probably cost more than his monthly rent. Comfortable, though. He'd give it that. Patterson returned to his seat, looked around the table, counted silently, nodded to himself. "We're all here, let's begin." He opened a leather portfolio. Inside, a document. Thick, maybe 30 pages. Last Will and Testament of Walter Henry Brooks. Patterson began to read. His voice was flat, professional, the voice of a man who'd read 1,000 wills and would read 1,000 more. No emotion, just facts and legal terminology and the distribution of a dead man's assets. "I, Walter Henry Brooks, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament." The reading continued. Legal boilerplate, executor appointments, debt settlements, tax considerations. 20 minutes of words that meant nothing to anyone except lawyers. Then the distribution began. "To my granddaughter Victoria Marie Sterling, I leave my property at Lake Travis. The house, the land, the boat dock, all furnishings and personal property contained therein. Current appraised value, $950,000. Victoria's pen stopped mid-note. She'd been expecting more. Ethan could see it on her face. Disappointment masked quickly, but not quickly enough. "To my grandson, Derek Alexander Sterling, I leave my investment portfolio currently managed by Thompson and Associates. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, current market value, $1,400,000. Derek didn't react, just nodded, mentally calculating tax implications probably. "To my son, Richard Thomas Brooks, I leave my vehicle collection. 6 automobiles currently stored at Classic Car Storage of San Antonio. 1957 Corvette, 1969 Mustang Boss 429, 1963 Pontiac GTO, 1970 Dodge Charger RT, 1955 Chevrolet Bel Air, 1948 Ford F1 pickup. Estimated collective value $680,000. Richard closed his eyes. Guilt? Relief? Both? Patterson continued reading. More distributions. More family members. Patricia got the Florida condo. Sophia Chen got jewelry. Christopher Brooks got savings accounts. 18 different bequests, 18 different people. Ethan's name never came up. Not once. 23 minutes of reading, $4.2 million distributed. Every family member got something, except Ethan. He sat there feeling nothing. Not hurt, not angry, just empty. He'd expected this, known it was coming. Still, hearing it made it real. Victoria whispered to Derek. Ethan couldn't hear the words, but he read her lips. "I told you the old man knew who deserved it." Derek smirked, actually smirked. Patterson cleared his throat. "That concludes the distribution of Walter Henry Brooks's estate." He began gathering papers. Victoria interrupted. "What about the ranch property, the 40 acres? Sold." Patterson didn't look up. 3 years ago, proceeds distributed as outlined. And the workshop equipment? Liquidated 2 years ago. Victoria sat back, satisfied. Everything accounted for. Nothing left for the grease monkey nephew who smelled like motor oil and wore flannel shirts to will readings. Ethan stood. Time to leave. Let them enjoy their inheritance. He had work tomorrow. Patterson's assistant entered the room. Carried a steel lockbox. Military issue. Old. Looked like Vietnam era. She handed it to Patterson. What's that? Victoria's lawyer instincts activated. Patterson set the lockbox on the table. A private bequest, per Mr. Brooks's instructions, to be presented only after the will reading is complete. The room went silent. Patterson dialed a combination into the lock. 3 numbers. Click, click, click. The lock opened. Inside an envelope, not the yellowed paper and wax seal from other stories. This was different. Canvas, oil-stained, the kind mechanics use to store important documents. Waterproof, fireproof, designed to last. Written on the front in carpenter's pencil. Ethan Brooks, private. Also in the lockbox, keys. 3 of them on a U.S. Army keychain, 1 brass, 2 steel. Patterson removed the envelope, held it carefully. This letter is to be read aloud. Mr. Brooks was very specific. All beneficiaries must be present. That's irregular. Victoria's legal mind engaging. Patterson looked at her over his reading glasses. Mr. Brooks was an irregular man. He opened the envelope, pulled out several pages, heavy stock paper, covered in Walter's handwriting. Dense. 5 pages. He began reading. Ethan, if Patterson is reading this, I'm dead. Probably doing something stupid. If you found me in the barn under that John Deere, I apologize. I know you've seen enough death for 1 lifetime. By now, you've sat through 20 minutes of legal bullshit, heard everyone get their piece, heard your name exactly 0 times. You're hurt. Or maybe you're not. Maybe you expected this. Maybe you think you don't deserve anything because you're just a mechanic and they're successful. Let me tell you something about success, son. Patterson paused, looked at Ethan, the old man's voice coming through clearly now. Not filtered through legal terminology. Just Walter. Direct. Honest. Success isn't a number in a bank account. It isn't a house on a lake. It isn't a stock portfolio. Success is this. At the end of your life, can you look in the mirror and say, I built something that mattered. I helped people who needed help. I kept my word. I honored my father's name. Can Victoria say that? Can Derek? Can my own son Richard? No, can you? Yes. That's why I'm not leaving you the lake house. You'd sell it and give the money to some single mother whose car broke down. I'm not leaving you the stocks. You'd cash them out to fund some kid's trade school education. I'm not leaving you the family heirlooms because you know what real family heirlooms are. Thomas's toolbox, my father's square level from 1943. The knowledge of how to fix what's broken and build what's needed. Victoria stood up. This is absurd. Sit down, Mrs. Sterling. Patterson's voice had edge now. Excuse me? Sit down. I'm not finished. She sat, shocked into compliance. Patterson continued reading. So what am I leaving you? I'm leaving you 28 years of work. Hidden, protected, built for you. Remember the ranch house basement? The south wall with the craftsman cabinet from 1952? Move that cabinet. Behind it is a door. Steel. Fireproof. I installed it in 1997, the year after Thomas died. The year after I realized you were all I had left of my son. Behind that door is a 2,800 square foot workshop. Climate controlled. Generator backup. Security system. In that workshop, you'll find every tool I've collected in 60 years. Bridgeport Mill, South Bend Lathe, complete snap-on master set, welders, sanders, everything. Estimated value $180,000. Parts inventory, ANOS parts for classic American vehicles. 40 years of collecting. Current market value unknown. Priceless to the right person. That person is you, and 17 fully restored vehicles. The room exploded. Victoria jumped to her feet. That's impossible. Derek started typing furiously on his phone. Richard just stared. Patterson raised his voice. There's more, please. They quieted, barely. 17 fully restored vehicles. Each one I bought as a wreck. Each one I rebuilt from frame up. Each title clean, registered through LLCs to protect from lawyers. All titled to you as of 3 years ago. Patterson pulled out another document, a list. He read it. 1967 Shelby GT500, 428 Police Interceptor, bought 2001, 3 years to restore, value $280,000. 1970 Plymouth Hemi Cuda, 426 Hemi, bought 2005, 4 years to restore, value $320,000. He continued. 17 vehicles, 17 stories, 17 years of work. The total came to $2.4 million. More than Victoria's lake house, more than Derek's portfolio, more than all of them combined. Ethan sat perfectly still, didn't move, didn't react, just processed. Victoria found her voice. He was senile. This is elder abuse. Patterson reached into his briefcase, pulled out more documents. Medical records from Mayo Clinic, psychiatric evaluations, video testimony. Walter Henry Brooks underwent 3 cognitive assessments in the year before his death. All showed perfect mental function. In fact, his scores were in the 98th percentile for his age group. He set the documents on the table. Furthermore, Mr. Brooks recorded video testimony in my office 6 months ago. He anticipated this exact reaction. Would you like to view it? No one answered. Patterson opened his laptop, pressed play. The screen showed Walter, sitting in the same conference room, wearing his coveralls, looking old but sharp, very sharp. Hello, Victoria? Derek, Richard, Patricia. If you're watching this, Ethan just found out he's inheriting my workshop and vehicles. You're probably angry. Victoria, you're already calculating legal strategies. Stop. You'll lose. Derek, you're doing math. It's not worth it. Richard, my son, you look guilty. Good. You should be. Patricia, you're not even there, are you? The video continued. Walter addressed each of them, explained his reasoning. Not cruel, just honest. Brutally honest. When it ended, silence filled the room. Victoria grabbed her purse, stood. Come on, Derek, we're leaving. She walked out. Derek followed. The door slammed. Other family members left quietly, one by one, until only Ethan, Richard, and Patterson remained. Richard approached Ethan slowly. He was right. About everything. I failed him. I failed Thomas. I won't fail you. He extended his hand. Ethan looked at it. At this stranger who was his uncle, who'd been absent for 30 years. He shook it. Brief, firm. We'll see. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But not rejection. Richard nodded. Left. Just Ethan and Patterson remained. Patterson gathered documents, handed Ethan the brass key. This opens the workshop. The property is 40 minutes from here. I can drive you if you'd like. Ethan stood. No, I need to go alone. Patterson understood. He handed over a manila folder. Deeds, titles, business documents, everything you need. Ethan took it, started to leave, stopped. Mr. Patterson, did he suffer at the end? Patterson considered the question carefully. No. The medical examiner said his heart stopped quickly. Walter died the way he lived, working on something he loved. Most men should be so lucky. Ethan nodded, walked out. In the elevator down, alone with his thoughts, the dam finally began to crack. But he held it together. Walter would expect him to be strong. So he was. For now, Ethan didn't go straight to the workshop. First, he drove to St. Mary's Cemetery in Fredericksburg. Section D, Plot 127. He'd memorized the location years ago. Didn't need the office map anymore. Just drove straight there. The cemetery was quiet. Monday afternoon, most people were at work. Just Ethan and the dead in the Texas heat pressing down like a physical weight. 97 degrees, no clouds. Sky so blue it hurt to look at. He parked under a live oak tree, the only shade for 100 yards. Got out. The heat hit him immediately, like opening an oven door. The kind of heat that made your shirt stick to your back within seconds. Thomas Andrew Brooks, 1962 to 1994. Father, son, craftsman. Simple granite headstone. No elaborate carvings. No angels or crosses or flowery epitaphs. Just the facts. The way Thomas would have wanted it. Ethan sat down on the grass next to the stone. Didn't care that the ground was hard and dry. Didn't care that he was wearing his good jeans. Just sat. Hey, Dad, been a while. He didn't say it out loud, just thought it. Talking to graves felt performative, like something people did in movies. But thinking to the dead, that felt real, personal. So, Walter's gone. You probably know that already. If there's anything after this, you two are together. Probably working on some engine in the great garage in the sky or whatever. A slight smile touched Ethan's lips, faded quickly. He left me something. The workshop. You remember the one? That barn behind the ranch house? Except it's not a barn anymore. It's something else. Something he's been building for 28 years. Ethan pulled a blade of dead grass, rolled it between his fingers. He restored your truck. The C10. The one from the accident. Spent 23 years on it. Can you believe that? 23 years. He bought it from the salvage yard 3 days after you died. I never knew. All this time, I thought it was gone. Crushed, recycled into rebar or car doors or who knows what. But Walter kept it, fixed it, made it whole again. The grass disintegrated in Ethan's fingers, dust to dust. I don't know what to do with all this. The workshop, the trucks, the tools, it's too much. I'm just a mechanic, Dad. I fix transmissions and change oil and patch exhaust systems. I'm not equipped for this. 3 rows over, a funeral was taking place. Hispanic family, maybe 20 people. A widow in black. 2 young boys trying to be strong for their mother. Couldn't be older than 8 and 10. Ethan watched them for a moment. Remembered being that age. Remembered standing at this exact cemetery 30 years ago. Remembered people saying things that were supposed to help, but didn't. Time heals all wounds. He's in a better place. God has a plan. None of it helped. What helped was Walter, who didn't say much, who just put his hand on young Ethan's shoulder and stood there. Solid, present, real. Ethan stood up, pulled his wallet from his back pocket. Inside, $200 cash. His emergency fund, money he kept for when the truck broke down, or the rent was due early, or life just happened. He walked over to the Hispanic funeral, waited for a pause in the service, approached the oldest boy. The kid looked up, confused. Didn't know this white guy in the flannel shirt. Ethan held out an envelope. He'd grabbed one from his truck, put the 200 inside. For your mom, whatever she needs. No strings. The boy just stared. Why his voice small, uncertain? Because someone did it for me once. Pass it forward when you can. Ethan walked back to his truck before anyone could ask questions, before the widow could thank him, before it became a thing. In his rearview mirror, he saw the boy hand the envelope to his mother, saw her open it, saw her hand go to her mouth. He drove away. The turn onto Ranch Road 2721 was easy to miss. No sign, no mailbox, just a cattle guard and a dirt road disappearing into oak trees. Ethan had driven past it 100 times over the years, never knew it was there, never had a reason to look. He turned. The Silverado suspension absorbed the bumps in the gravel road. Half-mile of nothing but trees. Post oak, live oak, cedar, dense enough that you couldn't see more than 20 feet into the woods on either side. Then the trees opened up, and there it was. The workshop didn't announce itself. No grand entrance, no decorative landscaping, just a metal building, 60 feet by 60 feet, dark green panels designed to blend with the landscape. Solar panels covered the roof. Small windows up high, single door, steel, heavy. It looked like a storage barn, the kind ranchers use for equipment and hay. Unremarkable, invisible, exactly what Walter intended. Ethan parked 20 feet from the door, turned off the engine, sat in silence. This was it, 28 years of Walter's life behind that door, 23 years of his father's truck, $2.4 million in restored vehicles. The last gift from the last man who'd loved him unconditionally. His hands rested on the steering wheel, same place they'd been for the entire drive. White-knuckled, tense. What if it wasn't real? What if Patterson made a mistake? What if Walter's letter was just the ramblings of an old man who'd lost touch with reality? But Walter hadn't lost touch with reality. The medical records proved it. The psychiatric evaluations. The video testimony. Walter had been sharp until the end, sharper than most men half his age. Ethan got out. The heat was worse here. No shade except what the building itself provided. The sun baked everything. Metal, gravel, skin. Cicadas screamed their endless song. Somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed. He walked to the steel door. The brass key felt heavy in his hand. Solid, real, not a dream. The lock was new. High-security deadbolt. Commercial grade, the kind banks used. He slid the key in. It fit perfectly. Turned smooth. No resistance. Click. Heavy bolts disengaged inside the door. 3 of them. Top, middle, bottom. Ethan pulled the handle. The door swung open on perfectly balanced hinges. No squeak, no resistance. Just smooth, quiet motion. Air rushed out. Cool. 68 degrees, climate controlled. The temperature difference was shocking after the Texas heat, like stepping from summer into autumn in a single step. Motion sensors detected his presence. LED panels flickered to life, one section at a time, cascading across the ceiling. 5,000 lumens, daylight spectrum, the kind of lighting dentists and surgeons used, perfect for detailed work. The workshop revealed itself in layers. First, the walls came into focus. Pegboard floor to ceiling. Every tool hung in precise placement. Shadowboard outlines showed where each tool belonged. Not random, not casual, organized with the precision of a surgical theater. Then the workbenches. 3 of them. Each one different. Each one purpose-built. Then the floor. Epoxy coating. Light gray. Seamless. No cracks. No stains. Perfectly level. And finally, the vehicles. 17 of them. Each covered with a custom car cover. Each cover embroidered with the year and make. Fitted. Breathable. Protecting paint that had taken years to perfect. Ethan stepped inside. The door closed behind him with a hydraulic hiss. Automatic. Weighted. Designed to seal the environment. Keep the climate controlled. Keep the dust out. Keep everything perfect. He stood just inside the entrance. Didn't move, just looked. Absorbing, processing. The smell hit him. Not oil and grease and diesel like Walter's barn. This was different. Cleaner. More refined. Metal polish. Leather conditioner. Paint thinner, fresh rubber. The smell of pristine machinery. Of vehicles maintained to perfection. And underneath it all, something familiar. Old Spice. Walter's cologne. Faint but present. Like the old man had just been here. Just left. Just walked out 5 minutes ago. Ethan's throat tightened. He walked to the nearest workbench. The red one. 10 feet long. Craftsman. 1956 model. He knew this bench. Recognized it immediately. This had been in Walter's father's workshop. The original Brooks family garage. Back when they farmed 40 acres and fixed their own equipment because paying someone else was wasteful. The bench top was worn smooth by 68 years of use. Tools had been set here. Parts assembled, engines rebuilt. 3 generations of Brooks men had stood at this bench, now 4. Ethan ran his hand across the surface. His fingers found a coffee stain near the back left corner. Brown, faded, old. Walter had told him about this stain once. 1963. His father had been rebuilding a carburetor. Set his coffee down, forgot about it. Bumped it with his elbow. Hot coffee everywhere. He'd cussed. Not because of the burn, because he'd wasted good coffee. That stain had been here for 61 years. Still here, still visible. A permanent mark left by a man who'd been dead for 40 years. But the mark remained. Proof he'd existed. Proof he'd worked here. Proof he'd mattered. Ethan opened the bench drawers. Top drawer first. Socket set. Not Craftsman. Older. Much older. Pre-war. The sockets were hand-stamped with sizes. 3/8, 7/16, ½ inch. The chrome had worn through in places, bare steel showing through. But they still worked, still fit, still did their job. Second drawer. Wrenches, combination wrenches. Open end, box end, also old, also worn, also perfectly functional. Third drawer. Screwdrivers, flathead, Phillips. The wooden handles were smooth from use, shaped by hands that had gripped them 10,000 times. These weren't just tools, they were artifacts, family heirlooms, each one with a history, each one with a story. At the bottom of the drawer, Ethan found something else. A knife, pocket knife, old-timer brand, 3 blades. The handle was worn almost white, smooth as glass. He picked it up, opened the main blade. The action was stiff but smooth, well-oiled. Maintained. On the handle, carved initials. James Andrew Brooks, Walter's father, Ethan's great-grandfather. This knife was probably 80 years old, maybe more, and it still worked, still held an edge, still served its purpose. Ethan closed the blade, put the knife in his pocket, felt the weight of it, the history. He moved to the second workbench, the fabrication station, custom built, steel, probably weighed 500 pounds. The surface was perfectly flat. Ethan knew without checking. Walter would have used a machinist level, would have shimmed and adjusted until it was exact. 0 deviation. Perfection. Magnetic squares attached to the corners. Plasma cutter hanging on the right side. TIG welder on the left. Underneath, organized storage. Metal stock. Aluminum. Steel. Stainless. All cut to standard lengths. All labeled. All categorized. The third bench was stainless steel, medical grade, 8 feet long for fine work. Carburetors, instruments, chrome parts, anything that required precision and cleanliness. A magnifying lamp mounted on an articulating arm, ultrasonic cleaner, parts washer, organization trays with what looked like 1,000 small compartments. Each bench had a stool, not just any stools, the stools, the ones from Walter's original workshop, worn leather tops, shaped by decades of use, shaped by the bodies that had sat on them. Ethan checked the bottom of one stool, found initials carved into the wood. T.A.B., Thomas Andrew Brooks, 1987. His father had sat here, had carved his initials when he was 25 years old, had worked at this bench, had built things, had fixed things. Ethan sat on the stool. It fit perfectly, like Thomas had carved it for him, like the worn leather had been shaped by his body in advance, waiting, ready. He sat there for 5 minutes, maybe 10, just sat, absorbing the weight of it all, the history, the legacy, the responsibility. Then he stood, walked to the vehicles, 17 of them, 17 covers, 17 years of work. He started with the first one. The cover was embroidered in silver thread, 1967 Shelby G500. He gripped the edge, pulled it off slowly, careful not to let it drag across the paint. Underneath, Wimbledon white with Guardsman blue racing stripes. The paint was flawless. Not good, not great, flawless. Mirror finish. Depth that seemed infinite, like looking into clear water, like you could see layers and layers beneath the surface. The chrome gleamed under the LED lights. Bumpers, trim, side scoops, magnesium wheels. Every piece perfect. Not a single pit mark, not a single blemish. Ethan opened the driver's door. The hinges moved silently, perfectly adjusted. The gap between door and body was consistent, 3/16 of an inch all the way around. The interior was black leather, original pattern, wood grain shift knob, Shelby gauges, everything correct, everything period accurate, everything perfect. On the passenger seat, a folder, 3-ring binder, labeled build documentation in Walter's handwriting. Ethan opened it. Everything. Purchase receipt from 2001. Estate sale in Oklahoma. $4,800 for a rust bucket that barely resembled a car. Photos showed what Walter had bought. A shell, barely, floors rotted through, engine seized, interior destroyed by mice and weather and time. Then page after page of restoration photos. The car stripped to bare metal, frame sandblasted, body panels replaced, engine rebuilt. Every step documented, every detail recorded. Completion date, July 22, 2004. 3 years of work, nights, weekends, every spare moment. Final note in Walter's handwriting. Eleanor lives. First start video on DVD and glove box. Watch it, Ethan. You need to see this. Ethan opened the glove box, found a DVD case, homemade label, Sharpie on white paper. Eleanor first start, July 22, 2004. He pocketed the DVD, moved to the next vehicle. The second cover came off to reveal a Hemi Cuda, 1970, lemon twist yellow, so bright it almost hurt to look at. The 426 Hemi engine sat under the shaker hood, 4-speed transmission, Dana 60 rear end. This car was worth more than Ethan made in 5 years. The folder on this one told a similar story. Barn find in Arkansas, 2005. Owner didn't know what he had, sold it for $12,000. Walter knew. Walter always knew. 4 years to restore. Finished 2009, right in the middle of the recession when everyone else was selling off their toys. Walter just kept building. Vehicle after vehicle, each one with a story, each one with a folder, each one representing years of Walter's life. 1956, Ford F100, big window, turquoise and white, two-tone factory paint. This one's folder had a note. Your great-grandfather's brake truck, been in the family since new, not for sale, ever. 1969, Camaro Z28, Hugger Orange. Rally Sport package, cross ram intake. This one Walter had found at a police auction. Impounded, abandoned, saved. 1972, Blazer K5, forest green. Full convertible top. Restored 2010 to 2012. Walter's note, for hunting trips we never took. Take your son hunting someday. Even if you don't have a son yet, You will. Ethan wasn't married, didn't have a girlfriend, didn't have prospects. But Walter had faith anyway. He continued uncovering vehicles, each one more impressive than the last. 1955 Bel Air, 1963 Corvette split window, 1968 Mustang Fastback, 1971 Challenger RT, 1957 Chevy 3100 pickup, 1966 Ford Bronco, 1969 GTO Judge, 1970 Oldsmobile 442, 1973 Jeep CJ5. 16 vehicles uncovered, 16 masterpieces, 16 examples of Walter's skill and patience and dedication. One remained, back corner, separate from the others. Larger tarp, not the fitted custom covers. This one was canvas, military surplus, the kind that had probably covered equipment in Vietnam or Korea or some war. Written on it in white paint marker, property of W.H. Brooks, do not disturb. Ethan walked to it slowly. His hands were shaking now. Had been for the last 10 minutes, but now it was worse. Visible, uncontrollable. This was the one, the truck from the letter, his father's truck, the 1967 C10. He gripped the canvas, heavy, thick, designed to protect against weather and time and everything else. He pulled. The tarp slid off with a whisper of fabric on metal, and there it was, Gulf blue, the exact shade Ethan remembered from childhood. Not close, not similar, exact. The paint was alive under the LED lights. Metallic flake caught the light, made the blue seem to glow from within. Deep, rich, perfect. Chrome bumpers, front and back, triple-plated, no pitting, no rust, mirror finish. Rally wheels, 15 by 8, Goodyear polyglass tires, white letters, period correct, not modern reproductions, actual vintage tires. Walter must have searched for years to find them. The body was perfect, every panel gap consistent, 3/16 of an inch, no waves in the metal, no ripples, no evidence that this truck had ever been anything other than showroom new. The driver's side door, where Thomas had died, where the F-250 had crushed the cab. No evidence remained. Perfect bodywork. You'd never know, never guess, never suspect that this truck had been twisted metal and broken glass and blood. Ethan walked around it, slow, taking in every detail. Bed was pristine. Wood bed strips, polished, sealed, protected. Tailgate sat perfectly flush. Latches chrome. Gate chains hanging with exactly the right amount of slack. Glass was flawless. Windshield, side windows, back window, all original date-coated glass. Walter's letter had mentioned this. Said it took years to find. Ethan believed it. He reached for the door handle. Chrome. Cool under his fingers despite the climate-controlled air. He pulled. The door opened on silent hinges. Perfectly balanced. Perfectly adjusted. The interior smell hit him immediately. Vinyl. New but also old. The smell of a 1967 truck interior. The smell of his childhood. The smell of Saturday mornings riding to the hardware store with Thomas. The smell of memory. Gulf blue vinyl bench seat. Original pattern. No tears, no cracks, no wear. The pleats were perfect. The stitching tight. This seat had been reupholstered with such care that it looked factory new. Dashboard restored. Not replaced. The original metal. The original gauge cluster. Speedometer reading to 120. Tachometer redlining at 6,000. Both needles resting at 0. Waiting to come alive. Headliner was white perforated vinyl. No sags. No stains. Perfect. Carpet was loop style. Factory correct. Light blue to match the exterior. Steering wheel was the original, but recovered in leather. Smooth. Supple. Perfect diameter for working hands. On the steering wheel, an envelope, white. Ethan's name in Walter's handwriting. He sat in the driver's seat before opening the envelope. Needed to feel this. Needed to process. The seat felt right, like coming home. The springs had just enough give. The backrest supported perfectly. The position was natural, comfortable, correct. He could smell Old Spice. Stronger here. Walter must have sat in this seat recently. Must have spent time here. Left his scent deliberately, a final presence. Ethan opened the envelope. His hands were shaking so badly it took 3 tries to get the flap open. Inside, 2 pages. Walter's handwriting. Dense. Every line filled. He began to read. Ethan, if you're reading this, you're sitting in Thomas's truck, your father's truck, your truck now. I need to tell you what this truck represents. September 17th, 1994. That's the day I lost my son, the day you lost your father, the day we both died a little bit. For 29 years, you've blamed yourself. Don't deny it. I know you. You think if I hadn't asked Dad to take me to town, if we'd left 5 minutes later, if I'd seen that drunk driver stop. Thomas died doing what fathers do, protecting their children. He didn't hesitate, didn't think, just acted, pushed you down, covered you, took the impact. That's not tragedy. That's love. Ethan's vision blurred. He blinked, kept reading. This truck was destroyed that day. Twisted metal, broken glass, blood on the seats. Insurance company said total loss. Crush it. I said no, because I saw something they didn't. The truck could be saved. It would take years. It would take everything I had, but it could be made whole again. And if the truck could be made whole, maybe you could too. The words hit like fists. Each sentence a blow. Not painful, not exactly, just overwhelming. The weight of 23 years, the weight of Walter's dedication, the weight of love expressed through labor. Every hour I spent on this restoration, I was thinking about you. Every panel I hammered straight, I was fixing you. Every bolt I torqued to spec, I was strengthening you. Every coat of paint, I was covering your scars. This truck is you, Ethan. Broken but not destroyed. Damaged but not beyond repair. Scarred but made stronger. Ethan's breath came in short gasps now. The dam was cracking. The wall he'd built over 30 years. The protection he'd put in place to survive. Cracking. Breaking. I want you to drive this truck. Not keep it in a museum, not sell it for money you don't need. Drive it. Put miles on it. Get dirt on it. Use it like Thomas would have. And every time you turn the key, remember, you survived for a reason. You were spared for a purpose. You have work to do. Build something. Help someone. Pass forward what you were given. That's the Brooks legacy. The second page was shorter, more personal. I'm proud to give you this truck. More proud to give you the chance to become who you were meant to be. Start the engine. I left the keys in the ignition. There's one more thing in the glove box. Love, Walter. P.S. Thomas would be so proud of you. Ethan looked at the ignition. Keys hung there. Original Chevy key on a keychain, leather fob, stamped in gold letters. Brooks & Son, Est, 1967. His hand moved without conscious thought. Gripped the key. Cool metal. Solid. Real. He turned it to the on position. Not start, just on. The fuel pump primed. Electric. Quiet. Modern upgrade hidden under vintage appearance. Gauges came alive. Needles swept. Oil pressure, water temp. Voltage. All systems functional. He waited. Let the carburetors fill. Let the fuel system pressurize. 30 seconds. Walter had taught him this. Never rush a cold start. Let everything settle. Let everything prepare. Then he turned the key to start. The 327 V8 roared to life. Not started, roared. Solid lifter cam. Lumpy idle. 900 RPM. The whole truck vibrated with barely contained power. Dual exhaust. Flowmaster mufflers. Deep. Throaty. The sound of American muscle. The sound of his childhood. The sound of Saturday mornings in hardware stores and his father's hand on the gear shift. Ethan's eyes closed. Tears squeezed out, ran down his face. He didn't wipe them, didn't care, just let them fall. The engine settled into a smooth idle, purring, waiting, ready. He opened his eyes, looked through the windshield, at the workshop, at the tools, at the legacy. His hand found the gear shift. 4-speed manual, same as the original. The knob was wood, polished, perfect. But he didn't shift, didn't move. Just sat there with the engine running and tears on his face and 23 years of Walter's love surrounding him. The glove box. Walter's letter mentioned it. Ethan opened it with shaking hands. Inside, a photograph. Black and white, old. The edges were yellowed. The paper was thick. Actual photo paper, not a digital print. 3 men stood in front of this exact truck, this exact Golf Blue C10. On the left, Walter. Young, maybe 30, wearing coveralls, grease on his hands, smiling. In the middle, an older man, 70 maybe, Weathered face, work clothes. This was Walter's father, James Andrew Brooks, Ethan's great-grandfather, the man whose pocket knife was now in Ethan's jeans. On the right, a small boy, 5 years old, standing between the two men, one small hand in Walter's hand, one small hand in his grandfather's hand, looking up at the truck with pure joy. Thomas, age 5, 1967. The truck was brand new in the photo, showroom fresh, dealer plates still on it. Ethan turned the photo over. Walter's handwriting, faded but legible. July 4th, 1967, the day we bought this truck. My father said a man's truck is his cathedral. Treat it with respect. We did. Now it's your cathedral. Build your faith in it. 4 generations of Brooks men connected by this truck. James bought it. Walter maintained it. Thomas drove it. Ethan inherited it. The photo trembled in Ethan's hands. He pressed it to his chest, held it there. And finally, completely, the dam broke. 30 years of grief poured out. Sobbing, gasping, shoulders shaking. The kind of crying that came from deep in the chest. The kind that couldn't be controlled or stopped or managed. Crying for Thomas, for the father who died protecting him. Crying for Walter. For the grandfather who spent 23 years healing him without him knowing. Crying for himself. For the scared 12-year-old boy who'd lost everything. For the 43-year-old man who'd thought he was alone. Crying for the wasted years. For the relationships he'd never built. For the family he'd pushed away. For the life he'd been too afraid to live. The engine idled. Patient. Waiting. 20 minutes passed. Maybe 30. Time became meaningless. Just the sound of the engine and the smell of old spice and the weight of grief finally finding release. Eventually the crying stopped. Not because he was done, because the body can only sustain that intensity for so long. It stopped from exhaustion, from emptiness, from having nothing left to give. Ethan wiped his face with his sleeve, rough flannel against wet skin. He didn't care how he looked. No one was here, just him and the ghosts and the legacy. He looked at the photo again. 4 generations, all connected, all part of something bigger than themselves. Walter's words echoed, "This truck is you. Broken, but not destroyed." Ethan put the truck in first gear, released the clutch slowly. The truck rolled forward, smooth, responsive, perfect. He drove it out of the workshop, into Texas sunlight. The transition from cool interior to hot exterior was jarring. But the truck didn't care, just rolled forward, strong, capable, ready. He stopped outside the workshop, left the engine running, got out, stood there looking at it, at this piece of his father, this piece of his family, this piece of himself. The Gulf blue paint gleamed in the sun. The chrome sparkled. The white letter tires stood proud and ready. This truck had survived, had been broken and made whole, had been destroyed and rebuilt, had been given a second chance. Just like Ethan, he pulled out his phone, took a picture, sent it to the only person who'd understand, Doc Martinez. Text went to both him and his daughter Maria. The text was simple. "This is what Walter left me." The response came 30 seconds later. From Maria, "Holy hell, that's a $250,000 truck." Ethan typed back, "It's priceless." He put the phone away, looked at the workshop, at the door standing open, at the 16 other vehicles inside. This was his now. All of it. The tools, the trucks, the legacy, the responsibility. Walter had given him the tools to do what he loved, the space to build what mattered, the foundation to become who he was meant to be. The question was simple. What would Ethan do with it? He looked at the truck, at his father's truck, at his truck. The answer came like it had always been there, waiting, ready. He'd honor it, all of it, the work, the sacrifice, the love. He'd build something worthy of the Brooks name, not for the money, not for the recognition, for the legacy, for Walter, for Thomas, for James, for all the men who'd come before and worked with their hands and built things that mattered. The Brooks & Son truck idled behind him, patient, ready, waiting for its next chapter. Ethan walked back to the workshop, back to the tools, back to the beginning of whatever came next. The steel door stood open, welcoming him home. 2 weeks passed before the lawsuit arrived. Ethan was under a 2003 Honda Civic when Maria brought him the papers. He didn't see her approach, just heard her voice cutting through the garage noise. "You got served." He rolled out on the creeper, looked up. Maria Martinez stood there holding a manila envelope. She owned Martinez Automotive now. Had taken it over 3 years ago when her father, Doc, retired to spend more time fishing. 35 years old. Tough as anyone, Ethan knew. Competent. One of the few people in Austin who'd hire a mechanic with grease under his nails instead of certifications on the wall. Served. She handed him the envelope. Guy in a suit came by 20 minutes ago. Asked for Ethan Brooks. I said you were busy. He said he'd wait. Waited 10 minutes. Got impatient. Left this. Ethan sat up, wiped his hands on a red shop rag. The rag came away black with oil. He took the envelope, heavy paper. Law firm return address, Stewart and Chen, attorneys at law, Austin, Texas. He opened it, standing there in the middle of the garage bay. Maria watched, didn't pretend not to be curious. Inside, legal documents, lots of them. Stapled packets, official seals. The language was dense, legal terminology, Latin phrases. But the cover page was clear enough. Brooks Estate Contest, case number 2024 CV 8472, Travis County District Court. Plaintiffs, Victoria Marie Sterling and Derek Alexander Sterling. Defendant, Ethan Michael Brooks. Maria leaned over his shoulder. Read the first paragraph. Let out a low whistle. They're suing you. Ethan kept reading. The claims were listed in neat numbered paragraphs, each one more aggressive than the last. Undue influence. That was claim 1. The plaintiffs alleged that Ethan had manipulated Walter Brooks during a period of diminished mental capacity, had isolated him from family, had controlled access to medical care, had pressured him into changing his estate plan. Claim 2. Fraudulent concealment of assets. The plaintiffs alleged that Walter and Ethan had conspired to hide valuable property from the estate, had created shell companies, had transferred titles illegally, had committed fraud. Claim 3. Tortious interference with inheritance expectancy. The plaintiffs alleged that they had a reasonable expectation of inheriting Walter's workshop and vehicles, that Ethan had deliberately interfered with that expectation, that damages were owed. The demand was at the bottom, bold print, impossible to miss. Plaintiffs seek full forensic accounting of the Walter Brooks estate. Plaintiffs seek return of all assets fraudulently transferred to defendant. Plaintiffs seek compensatory damages. Plaintiffs seek punitive damages. Plaintiffs seek attorney's fees. Maria spoke first. Can they do this? Ethan folded the papers. Put them back in the envelope. They just did. But you have that letter, the will, the video, all of it. Doesn't matter. They can still sue. Filing a lawsuit is easy. Winning is different. But filing? Anyone can file. He walked to the office. Small room off the main bay. Desk covered in invoices and parts catalogs. Calendar on the wall showing July 2024. Phone on the desk. Old landline. The kind with buttons and a coiled cord. Ethan picked up the phone. Dialed the number on the letter from Samuel Patterson, the lawyer who'd read Walter's will, the one who'd handed him the keys to the workshop. Patterson answered on the second ring. Patterson and Associates. Mr. Patterson, Ethan Brooks, I just got served. A pause, then. I've been expecting this call. What are the claims? Ethan read them off. Undue influence, fraudulent concealment, tortious interference. Patterson made a sound, something between a sigh and a laugh. Of course. Standard playbook. They can't contest the will directly because of the forfeiture clause. So they're attacking the transfers instead. Can they win? No, but they can make your life miserable trying. Discovery, depositions, interrogatories. They'll subpoena everyone you know. Dig into your finances. Look for anything that supports their narrative. How long does this take? 6 months if we're lucky. A year more likely. Maybe longer if they appeal. Ethan was quiet, thinking, calculating. A year of legal battles. A year of stress. A year of having every decision questioned. Every conversation examined. Every relationship scrutinized. What do I do? Come to my office tomorrow. We'll go through everything. Build a defense. Walter prepared for this. He knew they'd fight. He left us ammunition. Ethan hung up, stood there looking at the phone, at the papers in his hand, at the life he'd thought was finally making sense. Maria appeared in the doorway. You okay? He looked at her. Maria who'd given him a job when no one else would. Maria who paid him fair wages when others tried to lowball. Maria who treated him like a person instead of just another wrench turner. I'm fine, liar. She crossed her arms. You're a terrible liar, Ethan. Always have been. I will be fine. He corrected himself. Eventually. What do you need? Time off to deal with this. You got it. She didn't hesitate. Whatever you need, your job's here when you get back. Thanks. She started to leave. Stopped. Turned back. For what it's worth, your grandfather knew what he was doing. Rich people don't like losing. They especially don't like losing to people they think are beneath them. But that doesn't make them right. Ethan nodded, watched her go, then looked down at the lawsuit again. This was just beginning. Patterson's office the next morning was different than the conference room where they'd read the will. Smaller, more personal. Books lined the walls, law books, case law, statutes. 40 years of accumulated knowledge organized by topic and jurisdiction. Patterson sat behind a mahogany desk. The wood was old, real mahogany, not veneer, the kind you couldn't get anymore. The desk probably weighed 500 pounds. He gestured to a chair across from him. Sit. Tell me everything. Everything? Ethan sat. That could take a while. We have time. So Ethan talked. About the 2 years living with Walter, about the daily routine, breakfast at 6, Walter's medications at 8 and 6 and 10, physical therapy exercises at noon, the conversations, the stories, the silences. About the visitors, how few there were. Richard called maybe once every 2 months. Patricia called on holidays. Victoria and Derek, maybe twice a year. And always asking for something. Money, advice, connections. About Walter's mind, how sharp it was until the end. How he could recite conversations from 40 years ago, word for word. How he could calculate complex math in his head. How he could diagnose an engine problem just by the sound. Patterson took notes. Not on a laptop. By hand. Legal pad and fountain pen. The pen was old, gold. The nib scratched slightly as it moved across paper. When Ethan finished, Patterson set down the pen, leaned back in his chair. Good. That's all consistent with what Walter told me. Now I need to show you something. He opened a drawer, pulled out a folder, red, legal size, thick. Walter gave me this 2 years ago. Instructions were clear. If anyone contested his will or challenged the transfers, I was to use this. He opened the folder. Inside, documents, dozens of them. Medical records first, from Mayo Clinic. Neurological evaluations, cognitive assessments, memory tests, all dated within the last 3 years of Walter's life. Patterson pulled one out. This is from 14 months before he died. The neurologist's notes are very clear. Patient demonstrates cognitive function in the 98th percentile for age group. Memory is exceptional. Reasoning is sound. No evidence of dementia, Alzheimer's, or any other impairment. He pulled out another. This is from 6 months before he died. Same result, same doctor, same conclusion. And this, he pulled out a third. This is from 3 weeks before he died, Walter insisted. He knew time was short, wanted one final evaluation. Result, perfect cognitive function. Ethan stared at the papers. Walter had known, had prepared, had documented everything. Patterson wasn't done. He pulled out more documents. Financial records, vehicle titles, purchase receipts. These show the timeline of asset acquisition. First vehicle purchased in 2001, last one purchased in 2023. Spread over 22 years, long before you moved in with him, long before anyone can claim undue influence. More papers, LLC registrations, business filings, property deeds. These show the legal structure. Every transfer was proper, every title clean, every corporate entity registered correctly. Walter worked with me for 2 years setting this up, making it bulletproof. Then Patterson pulled out something else, a USB drive. And this is the insurance policy. What is it? Security footage. Walter installed cameras in the ranch house 2 years ago. Hidden. He recorded every interaction with family members. Every phone call he could. Every visit. Ethan's eyes widened. Every visit? Patterson nodded, every single one. He told me he wanted proof. Proof of what they said. Proof of what they asked for. Proof of their real motivations. Is that legal? Texas is a one-party consent state. As long as one person in the conversation knows about the recording, it's legal. Walter knew. That makes it legal. Have you watched them? Some. Patterson's expression darkened. It's not pleasant. Your cousins asked for money 6 times in 18 months, always with the same pitch. Investment opportunities, business ventures, sure things. Walter gave them money twice. $50,000 the first time, $30,000 the second. Neither was ever repaid. Patterson pulled out transcripts, printed conversations with timestamps and speaker labels. This one is from March 23. Victoria talking to Walter. Let me read you a section. Victoria says, "Grandpa, I need to be honest. The firm's putting pressure on me to make partner. I need to show I have capital, stability. If you could help me with just 100,000, I'd pay you back within a year. I promise." Walter says, "What happened to the 50,000 I gave you last year?" Victoria says, "That was different. That was for the condo investment. This is for partnership." Walter says, "And the condo investment?" Victoria says, "It didn't work out. The market shifted. These things happen." Patterson looked up. Walter never got his money back, never even got an apology. More transcripts, more requests. Derek asking for 75,000 for a hedge fund. Richard calling once in 8 months and talking for 6 minutes before hanging up because he had a meeting. And through it all, one constant: Ethan, showing up, taking care, asking for nothing. Patterson closed the folder. This is what we have: medical records proving competence, financial records proving proper transfers, video evidence proving their real motivations, and testimony from multiple witnesses about your character and Walter's wishes. Can we win? Patterson smiled. Thin, professional. We already won. They just don't know it yet. The question is whether they'll figure it out before they waste $100,000 on legal fees. What do? We respond to their complaint. We file a motion to dismiss. We attach some of this evidence. We show them what they're up against. Then we wait. Wait for what? For them to realize they made a mistake. For their lawyers to see the evidence and advise them to drop it. For reality to set in. And if they don't drop it, then we go to trial and we bury them. 3 weeks later, Ethan was working in the workshop when his phone rang. Number he didn't recognize, Austin area code. He answered. "Hello? Mr. Brooks? This is Jennifer Chen from Stewart & Chen. I'm one of the attorneys representing Victoria and Derek Sterling. What do you want?" Her voice was professional. Careful. "I'd like to discuss a possible settlement." "Not interested. Please, just hear me out. My clients are prepared to offer you $500,000 to walk away from the estate dispute. You'd keep the money. They'd split the vehicles and property. Everyone moves on." Ethan was standing next to the C10, his father's truck, the one Walter spent 23 years restoring. He ran his hand along the fender. Smooth, perfect, priceless. "No, Mr. Brooks, this is a generous offer. Fighting this in court will be expensive, stressful, time-consuming. We're offering you a way out." "I don't want out. I want what Walter left me, what I earned." "You earned?" Her voice shifted, slightly harder. "Mr. Brooks, you were a caretaker. My clients were family. They had expectations. Your clients visited twice a year. I was there every day. Your clients asked for money. I asked for nothing. Your clients saw Walter as a bank. I saw him as family. That's your perspective. That's the truth. And if you watch the security footage, you'd know it." Silence on the line, long silence. Then, "You have security footage?" "Your clients will find out when we file our response. Should be fun reading." "Mr. Brooks, I'm trying to help you avoid a long legal battle." "Then tell your clients to drop the suit, because I'm not giving them a penny. I'm not giving them a truck. I'm not giving them anything. Walter left me his legacy for a reason. I'm going to honor that." He hung up. The phone rang again 30 seconds later. Same number. He declined the call. It rang again. He turned it off. In the silence of the workshop, surrounded by tools and trucks and Walter's ghost, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Clarity, purpose, certainty. This was his to protect, not just the property, not just the vehicles, the legacy, the meaning behind it all. Victoria and Derek saw dollar signs, saw assets to be liquidated, saw their inheritance stolen by a grease monkey who didn't deserve it. They didn't understand, couldn't understand, never would. This wasn't about money. It was about honoring the dead, about respecting sacrifice, about carrying forward something bigger than yourself. Ethan walked to the wall where Walter's tools hung, found the 3/4-inch wrench, the one Walter had been holding when he died, the one Ethan had removed from his hand that morning in the barn. He held it, felt the weight, the balance, the years of use worn into the metal. A wrench was just a tool, simple, functional, but in the right hands it became something more, became the means to fix what was broken, to build what was needed, to create what mattered. Walter had understood that, had lived it, had spent 60 years proving it. Now it was Ethan's turn. The response to the lawsuit was filed 4 weeks after Ethan received the summons. Patterson delivered it personally. Showed up at the workshop on a Saturday morning, driving a black Mercedes sedan that looked out of place on the gravel road. Ethan was working on one of the vehicles, the 1969 Camaro, changing oil, basic maintenance, keeping things running. Patterson got out of the Mercedes, walked into the workshop, looked around with appreciation. Impressive. Walter built something special here. He did. Patterson handed Ethan a folder. Our response, I wanted you to see it before we file. Ethan wiped his hands, took the folder, sat on a stool to read. The response was devastating. It started with a point-by-point refutation of every claim. Undue influence? Attached are 3 medical evaluations showing perfect cognitive function. Fraudulent concealment? Attached are 22 years of purchase records showing legitimate acquisition. Tortious interference? Attached is video testimony showing Walter's explicit intent. Then it went further. Counterclaim. Defendant alleges that plaintiffs filed frivolous lawsuit with intent to harass and extort. Defendant seeks attorney's fees. Defendant seeks sanctions against plaintiffs and their counsel for bad faith litigation. And then the final section, the nuclear option. Defendant moves to enforce the will's forfeiture clause. Plaintiff's lawsuit constitutes a challenge to the will's distribution. Under the terms of Walter Henry Brooks's last will and testament, any challenge results in complete forfeiture of inheritance. Defendant requests that the court strip plaintiffs of their bequests and redistribute according to the will's alternative provisions. Ethan looked up. You're going after their inheritance? Patterson's expression was stone. They opened this door. Walter put that clause in the will for exactly this reason. He knew they'd sue, knew they'd fight. He wanted consequences. If we win this motion, they lose everything, the lake house, the stocks, all of it, everything. It gets donated to charity, veterans organizations, technical education programs, places Walter cared about. Ethan was quiet, thinking. Patterson waited. Let him process. Finally, Ethan spoke. Do it. File it. You're sure? This is scorched earth. No settlement, no compromise, all or nothing. I'm sure. Walter planned for this. He wanted me to fight. So I fight. Patterson allowed himself a small smile. I was hoping you'd say that. He pulled out a pen, clicked it. I need your signature here, and here, and here. Ethan signed. 3 places. Authorizing Patterson to proceed, authorizing the counterattack, authorizing the defense of Walter's legacy. When it was done, Patterson gathered the papers. This gets filed Monday. After that, things move fast. How fast? Hearing is scheduled for 6 weeks from now. Judge Catherine Moore. She's good, fair, smart. She'll see through their bullshit. 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Patterson stood. Prepare yourself. They're going to fight dirty now. They're scared. Scared people do desperate things. Let them fight. I'm not backing down. Patterson extended his hand. Walter chose well. They shook. Then Patterson left. The Mercedes disappeared down the gravel road, dust settling behind it. Ethan went back to the Camaro, back to the oil change, back to the simple, honest work of maintaining machines. But his mind was elsewhere, on the fight to come, on the challenge ahead, on the test of whether he was worthy of what Walter had given him. The next 5 weeks were a blur of legal procedure. Depositions. Ethan sat in a conference room for 8 hours while Victoria's lawyer asked questions. What was his relationship with Walter? How often did he visit? Did Walter ever give him money? Did he ever discuss the estate? Did he know about the vehicles? When did he find out? Ethan answered every question, honestly, directly. No embellishment, just facts. The lawyer tried to shake him, tried to find contradictions, tried to make him angry. Failed on all counts. More depositions. Maria testified, talked about Ethan's character, how he'd work on cars for single mothers at cost, how he'd teach kids basic maintenance for free, how he'd never ask for handouts or special treatment. Frank Harrison testified, Walter's old friend, the one who'd helped hide vehicles during restoration, talked about Walter's plan, about how deliberate it was, about how Walter had known exactly what he was doing. Doc Martinez testified, talked about the day Walter came to the garage 6 months before he died, how he'd pulled Doc aside, how he'd said, if anything happens to me, make sure Ethan doesn't give up. He's too good for his own good sometimes. Document production. Victoria's lawyers demanded everything. Bank records, tax returns, phone records, trying to find some evidence of improper transfer, some proof of conspiracy. They found nothing because there was nothing to find. Then came Victoria's deposition. Patterson handled it personally. Ethan sat in the corner and watched. Patterson was surgical, precise, every question designed to expose, every follow-up cutting deeper. Ms. Sterling, how many times did you visit your grandfather in the last 2 years of his life? Victoria shifted in her seat. I don't know exactly. Several times. More than 10? Probably not. More than 5? Possibly. Patterson slid a document across the table. Security log from the ranch. Walter kept track. You visited exactly 4 times in 24 months. Does that sound right? Victoria glanced at her lawyer, then back at Patterson. If that's what the log says. Did you ever stay overnight? No, I have a life in Austin. Responsibilities. Of course. Patterson made a note. During those 4 visits, did you ever help with your grandfather's care, cooking, cleaning, medical needs? That's what caregivers are for. Ethan was the caregiver. He was living there rent-free. He should have been helping. Rent-free? Patterson raised an eyebrow. Were you aware your grandfather offered to pay Ethan a salary? Offered him $20 an hour for caregiving? I was not aware. Ethan refused. Said he wasn't doing it for money. He was doing it because Walter was family. Victoria had no response. Patterson continued. Ms. Sterling, in March 2023, you asked your grandfather for $100,000, correct? I asked for a loan. Did you pay back the $50,000 he loaned you in 2022? I had setbacks, investments that didn't pan out. So that's a no? I intended to pay it back, but you didn't. Patterson let that hang, then asked for more money. Did that seem appropriate to you? Asking an 86-year-old man for money while refusing to pay back previous loans? Her lawyer objected, argumentative. Patterson withdrew the question. Asked another. Ms. Sterling, in your complaint, you allege that Ethan manipulated your grandfather. Do you have any evidence of this manipulation? He isolated him from family. How? He was always there. We couldn't have private conversations. You visited 4 times in 2 years. Most of those visits lasted less than 3 hours. Are you saying Ethan prevented you from visiting more often? He made me uncomfortable. How? He just did. With his looks, his judgment. His looks? The way he looked at me. Like he thought he was better than me. Better than you? Patterson's tone was mild, curious. Ms. Sterling, you're a successful attorney. You make 6 figures. You own property. Ethan makes $15 an hour, works under the table, lives in a 400-square-foot apartment. How exactly does he think he's better than you? It's not about money. It's about his attitude, his self-righteousness. Can you give me a specific example? Victoria couldn't. She fumbled, tried to explain, couldn't. The deposition continued for 6 hours. By the end, Victoria was exhausted, defensive, exposed. Derek's deposition went similarly. He had no evidence, no examples, just vague claims and hurt feelings. The evening before the hearing, Ethan's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello? Ethan, it's Patricia, Walter's daughter, the one who hadn't come to the funeral, the one who'd sent flowers with a note about prior commitments. What do you want? Her voice was strained, uncertain. I need to talk to you about tomorrow, about the hearing. What about it? I'm coming. To testify. I see. Ethan was silent, processing. Patricia continued. I know I wasn't there, at the funeral, at the will reading. I know what that looked like, what it was. I was wrong, Ethan, about everything, about Dad, about you, about what mattered. Why are you telling me this? Because Victoria called me last week, asked me to testify against you, said you manipulated Dad, said you took advantage, said we needed to stand together as a family. What did you say? I told her to go to hell. Ethan sat down, slowly. Patricia's voice broke slightly. I failed my father, I know that. I tried to control him, put him in a home, take away the things he loved. I thought I was helping. I was just making it easier for myself. You gave him what I couldn't. Dignity, freedom, love without conditions. Tomorrow I'm going to tell the judge that. I'm going to tell her Dad knew exactly what he was doing and that you earned every bit of what he gave you. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Not for you. For him, it's the least I can do. She hung up. Ethan sat there in the quiet of his house, holding the phone, thinking about redemption, about second chances, about people who finally understood what mattered. Tomorrow would be interesting. The hearing was scheduled for August 23rd. Judge Catherine Moore presiding. Travis County Courthouse, Courtroom 4B. Ethan wore his father's flannel shirt, Clean jeans, Red Wing boots polished until they shone. He looked exactly like what he was. A working man. Honest, simple, real. Victoria wore a designer suit. Derek wore Italian shoes. Their lawyers wore expensive watches and carried leather briefcases that cost more than Ethan's truck. Judge Moore was 58 years old, former prosecutor, then defense attorney, then judge. She'd seen everything, heard every lie, recognized every trick. She called the court to order, reviewed the pleadings, looked at both sides. This is a motion to dismiss and a counter motion to enforce a forfeiture clause, correct? Both sides acknowledge. All right, I've read the briefs. I've reviewed the evidence. I have some questions. She started with Victoria's lawyers. Counsel, your clients allege undue influence, but I see 3 medical evaluations showing perfect cognitive function. How do you explain that? Victoria's lawyer stood. Your Honor, medical tests don't capture everything. There are subtle forms of influence, emotional manipulation, social pressure. Do you have any evidence of emotional manipulation? We have testimony that the defendant was always present during family visits. Was he required to leave when family visited? Not explicitly, but his presence created an uncomfortable environment. An uncomfortable environment? Judge Moore's expression didn't change, but her tone sharpened. Counsel, your client visited 4 times in 2 years. Are you arguing that the defendant should have left his own home to accommodate these rare visits? Not left entirely, but given them privacy. The ranch house has 6 rooms, multiple spaces for private conversations. Did your clients ever ask for privacy? The lawyer hesitated. Not that we're aware of. Judge Moore made a note. Moved on. Counsel, you allege fraudulent concealment, but I see purchase records going back 22 years, long before the defendant lived with the decedent. How is that fraudulent? The vehicles should have been disclosed in the estate inventory. Why? They weren't part of the estate. They were titled to the defendant 3 years before the decedent died. Proper transfer, proper documentation. Where's the fraud? The intent was to hide assets from the legitimate heirs. The legitimate heirs were given substantial bequests, lake house, investment portfolio. They received over $4 million. Are you arguing they were entitled to more? We're arguing the distribution was inequitable. Judge Moore leaned back, looked at the lawyer over her reading glasses. Counsel, I've read the will. I've watched the video testimony. I've seen the medical records. Walter Brooks knew exactly what he was doing. He chose to leave certain assets to the defendant. That was his right. Unless you can show me clear evidence of fraud or coercion, this motion is going nowhere. She turned to Patterson. Mr. Patterson, your counter motion seeks to enforce a forfeiture clause. Explain. Patterson stood. Your Honor, the will explicitly states that any beneficiary who contests the distribution forfeits their inheritance. The plaintiffs have filed a lawsuit challenging the distribution. Therefore, they forfeit. That's a harsh remedy. It's the remedy the decedent chose. He anticipated this exact scenario. He wanted consequences for challenges. He put them in writing. And you want me to strip them of millions of dollars because they filed a lawsuit? I want you to enforce the clear terms of a valid will. Judge Moore was quiet, thinking. Then the courtroom doors opened. Patricia Morgan entered, walked down the aisle, approached the bench. Your Honor, I'm Patricia Morgan, Walter Brooks's daughter. May I address the court? Judge Moore looked surprised. This is highly irregular. Are you represented by counsel? No, Your Honor, but I have information relevant to these proceedings. Information the court needs to hear. Judge Moore considered, then nodded. Proceed. Patricia turned to face the courtroom, looked at Victoria and Derek, then at Ethan. My father died 10 months ago. I wasn't at his funeral. I sent flowers. I had prior commitments. That's what I told myself. The truth is I was a coward. I didn't want to face what I'd done, how I'd failed him. Her voice was steady, strong. For 5 years, I tried to put him in a nursing home. Told him it was for his safety. Really, it was for my convenience. I tried to take away his workshop. Told him it was dangerous. Really, I just didn't want to deal with it. I treated him like a problem to be managed instead of a person to be loved. Ethan did what I couldn't. He moved in. He took care of Dickon. He gave him dignity. He gave him freedom. He gave him the one thing Dad needed most, someone who actually cared. Victoria started to speak. Judge Moore raised a hand. Silence. Patricia continued, my siblings want to claim Ethan manipulated Dad. That's a lie. The only manipulation was ours. We manipulated Dad into giving us money, into making us feel important, into tolerating our absence. Dad knew exactly what he was doing with his will. He rewarded the person who earned it, who showed up, who cared. That wasn't me. That wasn't Victoria or Derek. That was Ethan. She looked at Judge Moore. Dad's will should stand, every word, every clause, every consequence. It's what he wanted. It's what's right. She sat down. The courtroom was silent. Judge Moore looked at Victoria and Derek, then at their lawyers. Here's what I see. I see an old man who knew his time was short, who wanted to reward the one person who actually cared for him, who set up a structure to protect that gift from exactly this kind of challenge. I also see family members who feel slighted, who believe they deserve more, who are hurt and angry. But hurt feelings don't override clear legal documents, and anger doesn't justify frivolous litigation. She looked at Victoria and Derek. Mr. Sterling, Ms. Sterling, I'm going to be direct with you. You have no case, no evidence of fraud, no proof of manipulation, nothing but speculation and resentment. Your grandfather made a choice, a legal choice, a documented choice. You may not like it, but that doesn't make it invalid. Now, I could grant Mr. Patterson's motion and strip you of your inheritances. The forfeiture clause is enforceable. You did challenge the distribution. Technically, you should lose everything. But I'm not going to do that, not yet. I'm going to give you one chance, one opportunity to withdraw this lawsuit with prejudice. Walk away, keep what your grandfather gave you. Stop trying to take what he gave someone else. If you do that today, this ends. No forfeiture, no sanctions, clean break. If you don't, we go to trial. And I promise you, based on what I've seen, you will lose. And when you lose, I will enforce the forfeiture clause. You will get nothing. Your choice. What's it going to be? Victoria and Derek huddled with their lawyers, urgent whispers, heated gestures. 5 minutes passed. Then Victoria stood. We'll withdraw, Your Honor. With prejudice? Judge Moore confirmed. With prejudice. Mr. Sterling, do you agree? Derek stood, voice tight. Yes. All right. Judge Moore made notes in her file. The lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice. The estate distribution stands as written. Both parties will bear their own legal costs. We're adjourned. The gavel came down, and just like that, it was over. Outside the courthouse, Patterson shook Ethan's hand. Congratulations. You won. Ethan watched Victoria and Derek walk away. They didn't look back. Just got into their rental car and drove off, probably straight to the airport, back to their lives, back to pretending this never happened. Did I, though? Ethan's voice was quiet. Win? You kept what Walter left you. That's winning. I destroyed what's left of this family. Patterson's expression softened. Ethan, there was no family to destroy. Family shows up. Family cares. Family earns the title. They had the title without the substance. Walter knew that. That's why he did what he did. Ethan nodded, but the weight didn't lift. Patricia approached, hesitant, uncertain. Thank you, Ethan said it before she could speak. For what you said in there. I should have said it years ago. She looked at the ground. To him, when it mattered. You said it today. That counts. She looked up, tears in her eyes. Can I visit? The workshop? See what he built? Anytime. She nodded, walked away, got in her car, left. Patterson put a hand on Ethan's shoulder. Go home. Go to the workshop. Do what Walter wanted. Build something. That's how you honor him. Not by feeling guilty, by living well. He walked away, left Ethan standing on the courthouse steps, alone, victorious, and somehow empty. The drive back to the workshop took 40 minutes. Same roads, same turns, same gravel driveway through the oak trees. But everything felt different. Ethan parked, got out, stood looking at the steel door. He'd won, protected Walter's legacy, kept the workshop, kept the trucks, kept everything. So why did it feel like losing? He opened the door, stepped inside, the cool air, the tool smell, the LED lights flickering on, 17 vehicles, billions of hours of work, decades of dedication, all his now. He walked to the C10, his father's truck, the center of everything, sat in the driver's seat, hands on the steering wheel, breathed. Walter's voice echoed from the letter. You have work to do. Build something. Help someone. Pass forward what you were given. The workshop was the means, not the end. The trucks were tools, not trophies. The legacy wasn't about keeping things. It was about doing things. Ethan started the engine. The 327 rumbled to life, strong, ready, patient. He put it in gear, drove out into Texas sunlight. Time to start building. 6 months after the courthouse steps, Ethan stood in front of a different kind of crowd. 47 people packed into the workshop. Mechanics, veterans, single mothers with broken down cars, high school kids looking for direction, local ranchers who remembered Walter, people who worked with their hands and understood what a second chance meant. The grand opening of Brooks & Son Restoration. Maria stood near the front, Doc Martinez next to her, Frank Harrison in the back, arms crossed, slight smile on his weathered face. These were his people, Walter's people, now Ethan's people. He hadn't prepared a speech, didn't believe in them. Words were cheap. Work was what mattered. But Patterson had insisted, said people needed to hear the story, needed to understand what this place represented. So Ethan stood there in his work coveralls and Red Wing boots and tried to find words that didn't sound hollow. This workshop, he gestured around. The tools, the trucks, none of this is mine. Not really. It belongs to every person who believed that work matters, that skill matters, that showing up matters. The crowd was quiet, listening. My grandfather spent 60 years proving that a man's worth isn't measured by his bank account or his job title. It's measured by what he builds, what he fixes, what he leaves behind. Ethan looked at the C-10 parked near the entrance, Gulf blue gleaming under the lights. That truck was destroyed in an accident that killed my father. 23 years ago. Walter bought it from a salvage yard, spent 23 years restoring it. Not because it was worth money, because it represented something. That broken things can be made whole. That death doesn't have to be the end. That love persists through labor. Someone in the crowd wiped their eyes, an older veteran, maybe 70, he understood. This workshop exists to carry that forward. We'll restore classic vehicles. Yes, that pays the bills, but we'll also fix cars for people who can't afford it. We'll teach kids who want to learn a trade. We'll hire veterans who need work. We'll be what Walter was, a place where honest work gets honest respect. He paused, looked at the faces looking back. If you need help and can't pay, we'll help anyway. If you want to learn and can't afford school, we'll teach you. If you have skills and need work, we'll find a place. That's the deal. That's the legacy. Maria started clapping, then Doc, then everyone. Not polite applause. Real, genuine, the kind that comes from recognition, from seeing yourself in someone else's story. After the crowd dispersed, after the handshakes and the thank yous and the promises to return, Ethan found himself alone in the workshop, just him and the trucks and the ghost of Walter's presence. His phone buzzed, text message, unknown number. This is Richard, I'm in town. Can we talk? Ethan stared at the message. Richard, Uncle Richard, Walter's son who'd been absent for 30 years, who'd stood at the will reading and said, I failed him. I failed Thomas. I won't fail you. 6 months of silence since then. Now this. Ethan typed back. When? Tonight, Billy's Roadhouse, 7 p.m. Billy's Roadhouse was the kind of place that hadn't changed in 40 years. Wooden booths, neon beer signs, peanut shells on the floor, jukebox in the corner playing Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings. The kind of bar where working men drank after work and nobody asked questions. Richard looked out of place. Even in jeans and a button-down shirt, he looked too clean, too California, too successful. He sat in a corner booth nursing a Shiner Bock, saw Ethan enter, raised a hand. Ethan crossed the bar, slid into the booth across from him. Thanks for coming. Richard's voice was uncertain, like he wasn't sure of his welcome. What do you want? Direct, Richard smiled slightly. You're like your father. Thomas never wasted words either. A waitress appeared, young, probably 20, chewing gum. What can I get you? Lone Star, Ethan said. She disappeared. Richard turned the beer bottle in his hands. I've been thinking about what happened. At the will reading, at the courthouse. What my father did, what I didn't do. The beer arrived. Ethan took a long drink, waited. I was angry at first. Richard continued. Hurt. My own father left me a car collection while he left you millions. My son got trinkets. His grandson got an empire. Ethan set down the beer, started to speak. Richard held up a hand. Let me finish. I was angry for about a week. Then I actually thought about it. Really thought about it. When was the last time I visited him? Called him, gave a damn about anything other than his money? He laughed. Bitter, empty. Answer is never. I didn't care. I was too busy being successful, too important for an old man who smelled like motor oil and told the same stories. What changed? Ethan asked. I sold my house. What? Richard took a drink. 2 months ago. Put my place in Pacific Heights on the market. 3.2 million. Sold in 4 days. Cash buyer. Why? Because I realized something. I'm 65 years old. I've got more money than I can spend. A marriage that's been dead for 10 years. Kids who only call when they need something. Sound familiar? Ethan said nothing. I became what I hated. Richard's voice cracked. Became exactly what my father warned me not to be. Success without substance, money without meaning. I was so busy chasing the next deal that I forgot what actually matters. The jukebox switched songs. Merle Haggard. Mama Tried. Perfect. So I sold everything. Told my wife I was done. She was relieved. Probably already has someone else lined up. Told my boss I was retiring. He tried to convince me to stay. Offered me more money. Like that was the answer. Richard looked at Ethan. Really looked. For the first time maybe ever. I want to learn what my father tried to teach me 40 years ago. I want to work with my hands. I want to build something that matters. I want to stop running from who I'm supposed to be. What are you asking? Teach me. Let me work in the shop. I'll start at the bottom. Sweeping floors, organizing tools, whatever you need. I don't want special treatment. Don't want a title. Just want a chance to learn. Ethan studied him. Looking for the con, the angle, the ulterior motive. Saw only desperation, the kind that comes from realizing you've wasted your life and time is running out. Can you be here at 6 tomorrow morning? Yes. Good. Bring work clothes, boots. We start early. Richard's face changed. Hope, relief, gratitude. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Works hard. Pay is minimum wage. No special treatment because you're family. I don't want special treatment. I want to earn it. Ethan finished his beer. Stood. 6 a.m. Don't be late. He walked out, left Richard sitting there, probably wondering what he'd just signed up for. Probably already second-guessing. Rich men didn't usually ask to work minimum wage jobs. But maybe Richard was serious. Maybe he really did want to change. Maybe Walter's death had shaken something loose, made him see what mattered. Time would tell. The first week, Richard showed up every day, 6 a.m. sharp, wearing new work boots that gave him blisters, jeans that were too stiff, gloves that didn't fit right. But he showed up. Ethan gave him the worst jobs, cleaning oil spills, organizing nuts and bolts, sweeping floors that would just get dirty again, testing him, pushing him, waiting for him to quit. Richard didn't quit. Second week, Ethan let him help with an oil change on a customer's truck. Showed him where the drain plug was, how to position the catch pan, how to check the filter. Basic stuff a teenager could do. Richard approached it like he was defusing a bomb. Careful, methodical, wrote down every step, asked questions, took nothing for granted. The old Richard would have delegated this, would have paid someone minimum wage to do it while he went to lunch. New Richard got on his back, slid under the truck, and did it himself. Got oil on his shirt, banged his knuckle on the frame, came out sweating and dirty and smiling. That was harder than I thought. Everything's harder when you actually do it yourself. Ethan handed him a rag. Clean up. We've got 6 more today. By the end of week 3, Richard could change oil, rotate tires, and replace brake pads. Wasn't fast, wasn't particularly good, but he tried, and he didn't complain. Maria noticed. Pulled Ethan aside one afternoon. You trust him? No. Ethan was honest, but I'm giving him a chance. Same chance someone gave me. Your grandfather? Ethan nodded. Maria watched Richard struggling with a seized lug nut, sweating, frustrated, refusing to ask for help. He's trying. Trying isn't the same as succeeding. No, but it's where success starts. Week 4 brought this first real test. A customer came in with a 1968 Mustang. Original owner, 82 years old, Vietnam vet. The car had been in his garage for 15 years. Wouldn't start. Hadn't run since his wife died. I can't afford much. The old man's voice was quiet, ashamed, but this was Betty's car. She loved this car. I just want to hear it run one more time. Ethan looked at the Mustang, faded red paint, flat tires, dusty, neglected, but solid, savable. Leave it with us. We'll get it running. How much? Don't worry about it. The old man's eyes got wet. I can't accept charity. It's not charity. It's respect. You served. My grandfather served. This is how we say thank you. After the man left, Richard approached. I want to work on that car. Why? Because I understand what it means to lose someone, To have one thing left that connects you, to be afraid it's gone forever. Ethan considered, then nodded. Okay, but you do it right. No shortcuts, no half measures. We rebuild this thing properly or not at all. Understood. They spent 3 weeks on the Mustang, nights and weekends. Richard learned things that hadn't existed in his world before. How to rebuild a carburetor, how to gap spark plugs, how to set ignition timing by ear, how to do compression tests and leak down tests, and all the small details that separated running from running well. He made mistakes, lots of them. Crossed plug wires, over-tightened bolts, forgot steps, but he learned. And slowly, carefully, the Mustang came back to life. The day they finished, they called the old veteran, told him to come by. He showed up an hour later, walked into the workshop, saw his Mustang. You fixed it? We did. Ethan handed him the keys. Full service, new fluids, new plugs, new wires, battery, tires, brakes. She's ready. How much do I owe you? Nothing. Already told you. The old man looked at Richard, then at Ethan, then back at the car. His hands shook as he took the keys. Can I start her? She's yours. He got in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, breathing hard, trying not to cry and failing. Turned the key. The 289 V8 fired immediately. Smooth idle, no miss, no hesitation, perfect. The old man sat there with the engine running and tears streaming down his face. This was the last thing Betty and I did together. The last drive before she got sick. I thought I'd never hear this sound again. Richard stood next to Ethan, watching, his own eyes wet. That's worth more than money. Richard's voice was barely audible. That right there, that's what matters. Ethan clapped him on the shoulder. Now you're getting it. Month 5 brought another change. A kid showed up at the workshop, 17, Hispanic, nervous, asked if they were hiring. Ethan looked him up and down, skinny, scared, clothes that had seen better days. What's your name? Marcus. Marcus Reyes. Experience? None, but I learned fast. I need work. Need to help my mom. School? Dropped out. Had to. Mom got sick. Medical bills. I'm all she has. Ethan recognized the desperation. The same desperation he'd felt at 12 when his father died and the world stopped making sense. The same look he'd seen in the mirror for years. You know anything about cars? I know they break and rich people can afford to fix them and poor people can't. Fair assessment. Ethan grabbed a wrench off the wall. 3/4 inch. What's this? Marcus took it. Looked at it. A wrench? What size? I don't know. Ethan took it back. Hung it up. Come back tomorrow. 6 a.m. I'll teach you. You're hiring me. I'm giving you a chance. Whether you're hired depends on whether you show up and work. Marcus showed up at 5:45, early, eager, ready. Ethan put him with Richard, told Richard to teach him the basics. How to organize tools, how to read a manual, how to change oil without making a mess. Richard approached it like a mission. Treated Marcus with the same patience no one had shown him. Explained things carefully. Answered questions. Encouraged effort even when results were lacking. Watching them work together, Ethan saw something unexpected. Richard teaching Marcus wasn't just helping the kid. It was healing Richard, giving him purpose, giving him the chance to pass forward what he was learning, to be the father he'd never been to his own kids. 3 months later, Marcus could rebuild a brake system. 6 months, he could diagnose electrical problems. 9 months, he was teaching other new hires. The workshop grew. Word spread. The place that fixed cars for veterans, that taught kids for free, that hired people other shops wouldn't touch, that treated work like it mattered and workers like they were worth something. 1 year after the grand opening, Brooks & Son had 12 employees, 8 mechanics, 2 apprentices, 2 office staff handling phones and paperwork. Revenue was steady, not explosive, but sustainable, honest. More importantly, they'd helped over 200 people. Fixed cars at cost or free for families who couldn't afford it. Taught 47 kids basic automotive skills. Hired 16 people who'd been turned away everywhere else. The numbers mattered, but the stories mattered more. Like Sarah Chen, single mother, 2 kids, car died, couldn't afford repair, couldn't get to work without it, about to lose her job. Brooks & Son fixed it for free. She cried in the parking lot, came back 6 months later with homemade tamales, said it was all she could afford, it was enough. Like James Wilson. Iraq vet, PTSD, couldn't hold a job. Ethan hired him anyway, gave him space, gave him time, gave him work that made sense. James had been there 9 months, hadn't missed a day. Like the Thompson family, 3 generations. Grandfather's 1972 Chevy truck. Grandson wanted to restore it, couldn't afford professional help. Ethan let them use the workshop, taught them, guided them. They worked on it every Saturday for 8 months. When it was done, the grandfather cried. The grandson understood what inheritance really meant. One evening, after everyone had left, Ethan stood in the empty workshop. Just him and the trucks and the tools and the silence. His phone rang. Patterson. Got something for you. The lawyer's voice had an edge. Come by tomorrow? What is it? You'll see. Trust me. You want to see this. Patterson's office the next morning held a surprise. Richard was already there, sitting across from Patterson's desk, looking nervous. What's going on? Ethan took the empty chair. Patterson pulled out a folder. Richard came to me last week, asked me to draw up some documents. I want you both to hear this together. He opened the folder, began reading. This is the establishment of the Brooks Family Technical Education Fund. Initial endowment, $500,000. Donor, Richard Thomas Brooks. Purpose, to provide full-ride scholarships to students pursuing automotive, mechanical, or skilled trade education. Preference given to students from low-income families. No GPA requirement. Selection based on character, work ethic, and need. And Ethan turned to Richard. You're giving away $500,000? Richard nodded. My father left me 6 cars worth almost $700,000. I sold 4 of them. Kept the '57 Corvette because Dad and I drove it once when I was 8. Kept the '69 Mustang because Thomas learned to drive in it. Rest went to this. Why? Because money I did not earn isn't mine. Not really. Because my father wanted me to understand that legacy isn't about taking. It's about giving, because you showed me what that looks like. Patterson continued, the fund will pay for 10 students per year, full tuition, books, tools, everything needed to complete a 2-year program. Renewable if they maintain enrollment and decent attendance. 10 students. Ethan did the math. That's life-changing for 10 families every year. That's the point. Richard leaned forward. Dad spent his life building things, teaching things, helping things. I spent mine taking, accumulating, hoarding. Time to fix that. Patterson pulled out more papers. There's more. Richard wants to make you co-trustee of the fund, help select recipients, oversee the program, make sure the money goes to kids who will actually use it. Ethan looked at his uncle. This is real? This is real. I'm not trying to buy forgiveness. Can't buy that. But I can try to earn it, one day at a time, one student at a time. The first scholarship went to Marcus. Kid had earned it. Worked 40 hours a week at the shop and studied nights for his GED. Passed it 3 months prior. Now he'd go to Texas State Technical College. Full ride, no debt, just opportunity. Marcus cried when they told him, actually sobbed, said his mother had been praying, said he thought college was impossible, said this changed everything. Ethan handed him the acceptance letter. Your job is waiting when you finish. 2 years, get educated, come back better. I won't let you down. I know, that's why we picked you. The second year brought more changes. A local news station did a story, human interest piece, the shop that runs on heart. Interviewed Ethan, interviewed Richard, interviewed customers whose lives had been changed by a free repair or a bon or a second chance. The story went viral, local first, then regional, then national. Good Morning America called, asked Ethan to fly to New York, do a segment. He declined, said the work was here, not in a TV studio, said cameras didn't fix cars, hands did. They offered money, he declined again. They asked why. He said because this isn't about fame, it's about legacy. And legacy is built quietly. One day at a time, one car at a time, one person at a time. The reporter respected that, ended the story with Ethan's words. Simple, honest, real. This isn't mine, it's Walter's and Thomas's. And every person who believed that work matters. I'm just the current caretaker. Someday I'll pass it to someone else. That's how legacy works. You don't own it, you serve it. After that, donations started arriving. Unsolicited, unexpected. $5, $50, $500. Checks from people who'd seen the story, who believed in the mission, who wanted to help. Ethan put every penny into the scholarship fund, didn't take a salary increase, didn't expand the building, didn't buy new equipment, just funded more scholarships, more students, more chances. By year 3, the fund supported 30 students. By year 5, only 60. Not because of Ethan or Richard or anyone else. Because people understood. Because the message resonated. Because somewhere deep in the American psyche, people still believed that honest work deserved honest respect. One Saturday morning, 5 years after the grand opening, Ethan arrived at the workshop to find an old Buick parked outside. 1987 LeSabre, powder blue, rusted wheel wells. Passenger door held shut with a bungee cord. An elderly black woman stood next to it, maybe 80, wearing a church dress, Sunday hat, white gloves. She looked nervous. "Can I help you, ma'am? Are you Ethan Brooks?" "Yes, ma'am." She reached into her purse, pulled out a folded newspaper article. The one from 3 years ago, the viral story. "I've been carrying this, waiting for the right time." She unfolded it carefully. "My grandson saw this. He's in prison, 15 years. Made mistakes, bad choices. But he's been studying, taking correspondence courses in automotive repair. He writes me letters, talks about when he gets out, about getting a job, about being better." She looked at Ethan with hope and fear. "He gets out in 6 months. I was wondering, could you give him a chance?" Ethan took the article, looked at his own words printed there about second chances and earned respect and legacy. "What's his name?" DeAndre Watson. "When he gets out, have him come see me. We'll talk." Just like that? Just like that. Everyone deserves a chance to prove they've changed. Some people just need someone to believe in them first. The old woman's eyes filled. "Bless you, bless you." "No, ma'am. Bless Walter and Thomas and all the people who believed in me when I had nothing. I'm just passing it forward." She left, the Buick's exhaust smoking, bungee cord holding, but she left with hope, with possibility, with proof that the world still had room for redemption. Richard had watched from the doorway, came out after she drove away. "You're going to hire a convicted felon? If he's willing to work and learn, yes." "Why?" "Because Marcus was one bad decision away from that life. Because I was one bad decision away. Because we all are. The only difference between him and us is luck and people who gave us chances." Dad would be proud. Ethan looked at Richard, really looked. 5 years of work had changed him. The softness was gone. The uncertainty, the desperate need to prove something. He was just Richard now. Worker, teacher, uncle, family. "You're proud. That's what matters." Richard smiled, nodded, went back to work. Ethan stood there in the morning light, looking at the workshop, at the sign above the door. Brooks and Son, established 1967. The date was when the C-10 was built, when Thomas got his first truck, when 3 generations of Brooks men stood together in a photo that now hung inside. But it was also when the legacy really started. Not with money, not with property, with a choice. To work honestly, to live simply, to pass forward what you received. Walter had made that choice. Thomas had made that choice. Now Ethan made it every day. And Richard, and Marcus, and every person who walked through those doors looking for more than just a paycheck. The sun climbed higher. Texas heat building. Another day starting. Another chance to build something worth passing on. Ethan walked inside, started the coffee maker, turned on the lights, opened the bay doors, ready for whatever came through them. Because that's what legacy demanded. Not perfection, just presence. Just showing up every day and doing the work that mattered. Just like Walter taught him. Just like he'd teach the next generation. The steel doors stood open, welcoming, ready. Brooks and Son was more than a business now, more than a workshop. It was proof that broken things could be made whole, that second chances were real, that legacy lived in action, not words. Ethan picked up a wrench, 3/4 inch, the same one Walter had died holding, the same one that had hung on the same shadow board for 60 years. He got to work, the only way he knew how, honestly, simply, completely, the way Walter would have wanted. 10 years after Walter died, Ethan returned to the barn where he'd found him. The ranch had been sold long ago. New owners, young couple from Dallas. They'd renovated the house, added a pool, put in solar panels, made it modern, made it theirs. But they'd kept the barn, left it alone. Something about the space felt sacred. They couldn't explain it, just knew it shouldn't be changed. Ethan had called ahead, asked permission to visit. They'd said yes immediately, said they had heard the story, said he was welcome anytime. He stood in the doorway now, October afternoon, Texas heat finally breaking, temperature in the low 80s, Gentle breeze carrying the smell of hay and cattle and earth. The barn looked the same. Fluorescent lights, concrete floor, oil stains that would never come out. The John Deere 4020 still sat in the corner. New owners used it, maintained it, kept Walter's work alive. Ethan walked to the spot, the exact place where he'd found Walter's body, where the creeper had been, where the 3/4-inch wrench had fallen from dead fingers. He knelt, placed his hand on the concrete. Cool, solid, real. "Hey, Walter, been a while." He didn't say it out loud, just thought it, the way he always did, the way that felt right. 10 years, a lot has changed. The workshop is thriving. We've got 22 employees now. We've helped over 1,000 people. The scholarship fund has put 216 kids through trade school. Richard is running the education program full-time. Marcus manages the restoration division. DeAndre, the kid whose grandmother came to us, he's our lead mechanic now. Best diagnostic mind I've ever seen. A bird flew through the open barn door, landed on a rafter, looked down at Ethan, cocked its head. "We're doing what you wanted. Building things, fixing things, helping people, passing it forward every day, every single day." The bird flew away, out into afternoon light, gone. "I brought someone to meet you." Ethan stood, turned toward the door. "Come on in." A young woman entered, 26 years old, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, coveralls, work boots, grease under her fingernails. She looked nervous, uncertain. "This is Sarah," Ethan gestured. "Sarah Martinez, Sarah Chen's daughter. The single mother whose car they'd fixed for free 10 years ago. The one who'd brought tamales, who'd cried in the parking lot." Sarah had been 16 then, watching her mother struggle, watching her mother worry, watching strangers help when help was needed. Now she stood in Walter's barn, a certified master mechanic, graduate of the Brooks Scholarship Program, top of her class, offered jobs at dealerships making twice what Ethan could pay. She'd turned them down, said she wanted to work where work mattered, where people mattered, where legacy meant something. Ethan had hired her 6 months ago, watched her prove every day that the scholarship money had been well spent, that character and skill could coexist, that the next generation understood what mattered. "Sarah, this is where it started, where Walter died, where I found him, where everything changed." Sarah looked around, taking it in, the space, the history, the weight of what happened here. "Thank you," her voice was quiet. "Not to me, to him, for what you built, for what you gave us." Ethan put his hand on her shoulder. "He'd be proud of you." They stood there in silence, 3 generations connected by a moment, by a choice, by a decision to help instead of ignore, to give instead of take, to build instead of destroy. Then they left, walked out into Texas afternoon, left the barn to its silence and its memories and its ghosts. The drive back to the workshop took 40 minutes. Same roads Walter had driven for 60 years, same turns, same landmarks. The oak tree struck by lightning in 1987. The creek that flooded every spring, the billboard advertising Whataburger that had been there since 1975. Some things changed, some things stayed the same. That's how life worked. Brooks & Son looked different than it had 10 years ago. The original building was still there. Still green metal panels, still solar roof. But they'd expanded, added 2 more bays, built a dedicated paint booth, constructed a classroom for teaching. The parking lot held 15 vehicles, customer cars, project trucks, the C10 parked in its usual spot near the entrance. Gulf blue gleaming, 10 years of regular driving, 30,000 miles added, but still perfect, still maintained, still honored. Inside, the workshop hummed with activity. Lifts running, air tools hissing, radio playing classic country, the sound of work being done right. Marcus was supervising 2 apprentices on a brake job, explaining, demonstrating, teaching the way Richard had taught him, the way Ethan had taught Richard, the way Walter had taught them all. DeAndre was deep in an electrical diagnosis on a 2015 Ford, multimeter in hand, wiring diagram on his tablet, focused, competent, proof that second chances worked when people were willing to earn them. Richard worked in his corner, 75 years old now, slower than before, but still present, still engaged, still teaching. He'd found peace in these walls, found purpose, found the father he'd ignored for 30 years by becoming the man that father had wanted. James Wilson, the Iraq vet, ran the parts department. Organized, efficient, PTSD under control because he had structure and purpose and people who understood. Maria stopped by twice a week. She'd sold Martinez Automotive 3 years ago. Retired. But retirement didn't mean stopping. It meant choosing how to spend time. She chose here, helping, advising, being family. This was the legacy. Not vehicles, not money, not property. People, connected by work, by respect, by shared understanding that showing up mattered. Ethan walked through the shop, checking work, answering questions, solving problems, being present. A young apprentice struggled with a stubborn bolt. 18 years old, first week on the job, frustration building, about to give up. Ethan handed him a penetrating oil spray. Let it soak, 5 minutes, then try again. Don't force it, persuade it. The kid looked skeptical. That'll work? Usually. And if it doesn't, we'll heat it. And if that doesn't work, we'll cut it. There's always a solution. You just have to be patient enough to find it. The kid sprayed the bolt, set down his wrench, waited. Ethan moved on, stopped at the C10, ran his hand along the fender. Same gesture he'd made 1,000 times, checking, confirming, connecting. The truck had become more than transportation. It was a symbol, a reminder, a rolling memorial to Thomas and Walter and everyone who'd built things that lasted. Kids asked about it. Where'd you get that truck? How old is it? Can I sit in it? Ethan always said yes, always explained, always told the story about the accident, about Walter's 23-year restoration, about broken things being made whole. Some kids got it, some didn't, but the ones who got it really got it. Understood that objects could carry meaning, that preserving history mattered, that respecting what came before was how you built what came next. Evening fell, employees headed home, lights turned off one by one. The shop emptied, quiet returned. Ethan locked the front door, set the alarm, walked to his truck. Not the C10 tonight. That stayed here. Protected. Preserved. Tonight he drove his daily driver. A 2019 Silverado. Practical, reliable, nothing special. Home was different now too. Not the 400-square-foot apartment. He'd moved 5 years ago. Small house on 3 acres. Built in 1965. Needed work when he bought it. He'd done it himself. New roof, new plumbing, refinished floors, made it his. The house sat dark when he arrived. Empty. He lived alone. Always had. Relationships had never worked. Too busy, too focused, too committed to the work. Some people asked if he was lonely. He said no. Said he had family at the shop. Had purpose. Had meaning. That was enough. Most nights it was true. Tonight felt different. He walked inside, turned on lights. The house had good bones, solid construction, the kind that lasted. Kitchen was updated, living room comfortable. 2 bedrooms, one he slept in, one he used for storage. On the wall in the living room hung 3 photographs. First, the original, black and white, 1967. 3 generations of Brooks men in front of the C10. Walter, his father, Thomas, age 5. Second, a new one, taken 5 years ago. Ethan, Richard, Marcus, standing in front of the same truck, same pose, different generation, same legacy. Third, the newest, taken last week. Ethan, Sarah, DeAndre, the next wave, the future. 3 photos, spanning nearly 60 years. Different faces, same values, same commitment, same understanding that work done right was its own reward. Ethan made dinner. Simple. Steak, baked potato, green beans, cooked on a cast iron skillet that had been his father's. Seasoned by decades of use. Black as night, non-stick from pure carbon. He ate alone at the kitchen table. Silence broken only by the sound of fork on plate, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of cattle from the neighbor's ranch. After dinner, he cleaned, washed dishes by hand, dried them, put them away. Same routine every night. Order, structure, control in a chaotic world. Then he went to the second bedroom, the one with storage, opened the closet, pulled out a box. Inside, letters, dozens of them, handwritten, some on notebook paper, some on proper stationery, some on the back of grocery receipts. Thank you letters from people whose lives had been changed, whose cars had been fixed, whose kids had been taught, whose second chances had been given. Ethan pulled one out, read it. From a woman in San Antonio, her son had gone through the scholarship program, now worked as a diesel mechanic, making good money, supporting his family, staying out of trouble. Your grandfather's legacy saved my son's life. That's not hyperbole. That's truth. He was heading down a bad road. Your program gave him a different path. We'll be forever grateful. Another letter from a veteran, served in Afghanistan, came home broken, couldn't find work. Brooks and Son hired him, gave him purpose, gave him pride. You didn't just give me a job. You gave me back my dignity. You treated me like a person instead of a problem. That's rare. That's precious. That's everything. Letter after letter, story after story, lives changed, futures redirected, hope restored. Ethan read until midnight, then put the letters away. Carefully, respectfully. These were the real inheritance, not dollars, not property. Impact, meaning, legacy measured in human terms. He went to bed, lay in darkness, thought about Walter, about Thomas, about the long chain of choices that led to this moment. Sleep came slowly, but it came. Morning arrived at 5:30, same as always. Ethan's internal clock didn't believe in sleeping in. 60 years of working men in his bloodline. Early rising was genetic. He showered, dressed, made coffee, strong, black, no sugar. The way Walter drank it, the way Thomas drank it, the way real coffee was meant to be. At 6:15, he received a text from Richard. Can you come to the workshop? Something you need to see. Ethan drove the Silverado, arrived at 6:30. Richard's truck was already there. So was Marcus's, and Sarah's, and Patterson's Mercedes. Patterson, the lawyer, why was he here? Ethan walked in, found them gathered around the C10, serious expressions, concerned faces. What's wrong? Is the truck okay? The truck's fine. Richard's voice was strained. This is about something else. Patterson stepped forward, carried his leather briefcase, the same one from 10 years ago, opened it, pulled out an envelope. Canvas, oil-stained, familiar. Ethan's heart stopped. That's Walter's envelope. From the will reading. Patterson nodded. Not exactly. This is a different one. Walter left it with me. Instructions were very specific, to be opened on the 10th anniversary of his death, in the presence of you, Richard, and any employees you deemed worthy. 10 years. Today was the anniversary, October 17th, the day Walter died under the John Deere. Ethan took the envelope, his name in Walter's handwriting, but also other names, Richard, Marcus, and a note, to whoever carries forward what we built. Open it. Richard's voice was quiet. Ethan broke the seal. Inside, several pages, dense handwriting. Walter's final message. Written when? Before he died? How long had he been planning this? He began reading aloud. To Ethan, Richard, and the family you've built. If you're reading this, 10 years have passed since I died. 10 years since Ethan found me in the barn. 10 years since everything changed. I'm writing this 2 months before my death. I know the end is coming. Heart can't take much more. Doctor gives me 6 months. I'll be surprised if I make 3. But that's okay. I've lived long enough, done what I needed to do. The question is whether you've done what you needed to do. Ethan's voice cracked. He paused, steadied himself, continued. Ethan, by now you should have built something worth protecting. Not a business, a legacy. The workshop should be more than a place that fixes cars. It should be a place that fixes lives, that gives second chances. That proves work still matters in a world that's forgotten. If you've done this, I'm proud. If you haven't, it's not too late. Start now. The number of days matters less than what you do with them. Richard paused, looked at Richard. Richard, my son, if you're reading this, you came back, you returned to Texas. You learned what I tried to teach you 40 years ago. That success without substance is just accumulation. That money without meaning is just numbers. That a man's worth is measured by what he builds, not what he earns. I hope you found peace. I hope you found purpose. I hope you found the part of yourself you left behind when you chased Silicon Valley gold. Richard wiped his eyes, nodded. Keep going. To Marcus, I don't know your name yet, don't know your face, but I know you exist. You're the first kid from nothing who got a chance, who took it, who became something. Don't forget where you came from. Don't forget who helped you. Don't forget that you have a responsibility now to help the next person, to pass forward what you received. That's how legacy works. Not by keeping it, by giving it away. Marcus stood straight, strong, silent, understanding. To whoever else is there, the employees, the students, the family that's been built, you're the proof. Proof that the old way still works, that honest work still matters, that character still counts. Don't let the world tell you different. Don't let anyone convince you that what you do is less important than what someone in a suit does. You build things, you fix things, you make life work for people who can't afford to make it work themselves. That's noble, that's worthy, that's enough. The letter continued, longer, they're more personal, more specific. I've left one more thing. Patterson knows about it. It's not much, but it's important. In my safe deposit box at First National Bank, there's a key. The key opens a storage unit in Lockhart, Unit 247. Inside that unit is my last project. Something I started 30 years ago but never finished. Something I want you to finish. Together, as a family, as a team, as proof that what I built didn't die with me. Patterson pulled out a key, small, brass, attached to a tag, First National Bank, safe deposit box 892. We can go now, if you want. Patterson's voice was gentle. Ethan looked at Richard, at Marcus, at Sarah, at the gathered family. Let's go. First National Bank opened at 9. They arrived at 8:50, waited in the parking lot, silent, anticipating, wondering. At 9, the doors unlocked. They entered, approached the bank manager, explained. She checked records, verified, led them to the vault. Safe deposit box 892, medium size. She used her key. Ethan used the key Patterson provided. Both turned, the box unlocked. Inside, another key, larger, storage unit key, and a note. Unit 247, Lockhart Storage. What's inside belongs to all of you. Finish it, together. That's all I ask. Lockhart was 30 minutes away. Small town, population 5,000. The storage facility was on the edge of town. Cyclone fence, rolling gates, rows of identical orange doors. Unit 247 was in the back, 10 by 20, climate controlled. The padlock was new. Patterson's doing, maintaining the unit for 10 years, following Walter's instructions. Ethan unlocked it, rolled up the door. Inside, a vehicle, covered with a tarp, and tools and parts, and a workbench with plans spread out. They pulled off the tarp together, Ethan, Richard, Marcus, Sarah. Underneath, a 1941 Willys pickup truck, incomplete, partially restored, clearly a work in progress. The body was done, painted, Ford corporate blue, the color of Walter's first truck, the color he'd loved his whole life. The frame was restored, powder-coated, perfect. But the engine was disassembled, spread across the workbench, organized, labeled, ready for assembly. The interior was torn apart, seats removed, dashboard bare, wiring hanging. On the workbench, a folder. Build notes, in Walter's handwriting. Every step documented, every part cataloged, every measurement recorded. And a final note, paper clipped to the front. This was my father's truck, your great-grandfather's. James Andrew Brooks. He bought it new in 1941, drove it until 1985. When he died, it was already worn out. I started restoring it in 1994. Right after Thomas died, worked on it when I could, but life got in the way, projects piled up. This one got pushed aside. I always meant to finish it, never did. Now it's yours. Finish what I started. Make it whole. Drive it. Honor the man who started this family's legacy. Honor the work. Honor the chain that connects us all. Ethan ran his hand along the fender. Smooth, perfect, 90% done. Just needed the final 10%. The engine, the interior, the details. How long will this take? Sarah asked. Ethan looked at the parts, at the plans, at the work remaining. If we work together? 6 months, maybe 8. Then let's start. Marcus was already rolling up his sleeves. They spent the next 8 months on the Willys, not during work hours, after, evenings, weekends. Time they could have spent doing anything else. They spent it here, together, building. Ethan led the engine assembly, teaching, demonstrating, letting others make mistakes and learn from them. Richard handled the interior, reupholstering seats, installing dashboard, running new wiring, doing the detail work that required patience and precision. Marcus fabricated parts that couldn't be bought. Brackets, mounts, custom pieces, showing the skills he'd learned over 10 years. Sarah handled paint correction and final assembly, making sure everything fit, everything worked, everything met Walter's standard. Others helped, DeAndre, James, apprentices who wanted to be part of something, who understood they were building more than a truck. They were completing a circle, honoring the dead by finishing what they'd started. 8 months became 9, 9 became 10, not because the work was hard, because they wanted it right. Perfect, worthy. Finally, on a Saturday in August, they were done. The 1941 Willys sat in the Brooks & Son workshop, complete, perfect, ready. Ford corporate blue paint gleaming, chrome polished, white wall tires, running boards, the whole vintage package. Under the hood, a 134 cubic inch inline 4, rebuilt to original specifications. Every gasket new, every bolt torqued correctly, every detail right. Inside, reupholstered bench seat in brown leather, original gauge cluster restored, 3-speed manual transmission. Everything period correct, everything functional. They gathered around it, 22 employees, all present, all witnesses. Ethan held the keys, original Willys keys. Somehow Walter had kept them for 40 years. He handed them to the youngest apprentice, 17 years old, kid named David, first week on the job, barely knew a wrench from a screwdriver. Start it. The kid's eyes went wide. Me? You. This truck belongs to all of us, not to me, not to Richard, to everyone who believes in this place. You're part of that. So start it. David took the keys, hands shaking, walked to the truck, got in, adjusted the seat, found the clutch, turned the key. The flathead 4 turned over, coughed, caught, settled into a smooth idle. Quiet compared to modern engines, but steady, reliable, real. The apprentice sat there with the engine running, grinning, proud, part of something bigger than himself. Everyone applauded, not polite, real, genuine, recognition that this moment mattered. Richard leaned close to Ethan. Dad would have loved this. He's here, Ethan said it with certainty. In this truck, in this room, in all of us. That's what legacy means. The dead don't leave. They live through what they built, through who they taught, through what continues. That evening, after everyone left, Ethan sat alone in the workshop. Just him and the 2 trucks. The C10, Gulf Blue, Thomas's truck, his truck, the symbol of survival and restoration. And the Willys, Ford Blue, James's truck, Walter's project, the family's completion. 2 trucks, 3 generations apart, connected by the same values, the same commitment, the same belief that work done right was its own reward. Ethan pulled out his phone, took a picture, both trucks, side by side, sent it to Patterson with a message. It's done. Walter's last project, finished. The response came 30 seconds later. He knew you would. That's why he trusted you with it. Ethan put the phone away, stood, walked to the wall where Walter's tools still hung, found the 3/4 inch wrench, the one Walter had died holding, the one that had started everything. He held it, felt the weight, the history, the meaning. Then he hung it back up, exactly where it belonged, on the shadow board, in its outline, ready for the next person who needed it. Because that's how legacy worked. You didn't hoard it, didn't keep it, didn't lock it away. You used it, shared it, passed it forward. The workshop lights turned off one by one. Ethan set the alarm, locked the door. Outside, Texas night had fallen. Stars visible, millions of them. The kind of sky you only got far from cities, far from light pollution, far from the noise. He stood there looking up, thinking about Walter, about Thomas, about James, about all the men who'd come before, who'd worked with their hands, who'd built things that lasted, who'd left marks that mattered, and about all the people who'd come after, Marcus, Sarah, DeAndre, David, the hundreds of students, the thousands of customers, the chain extending forward into a future he'd never see. His phone buzzed, text from Marcus, group message to all employees. Thank you for teaching us, for trusting us, for showing us that work still matters. We won't let you down. Responses flooded in from Richard, from Sarah, from DeAndre, from apprentices and mechanics and office staff, all saying the same thing in different words. We're family. We're committed. We're here. Ethan typed back, simple, direct, true. Walter would be proud. I know I am. He got in the Silverado, started the engine, drove home through Texas darkness, past the same landmarks. The lightning struck oak, the flooding creek, the Whataburger billboard. Some things changed. Some things stayed the same. The work continued. The legacy lived. The chain held strong. And somewhere, somehow, Walter was smiling. Because broken things had been made whole. Because second chances had been given. Because honest work still mattered in a world that had almost forgotten. Because his grandson had understood, had honored, had built something worth passing on. Not a business, not a fortune, a family, a purpose, a proof that the old ways still worked when people were brave enough to try them. Ethan pulled into his driveway, turned off the engine, sat in silence. Tomorrow, he'd wake at 5:30, make coffee, drive to the workshop, do it all again. And the day after that, and the day after that, until he couldn't anymore, until his own turn came, until someone else found him under a truck or a car or a project and had to carry forward what he'd built. That's how legacy worked. Not in grand gestures, not in dramatic moments, in daily choices, in showing up, in doing the work that mattered. He got out, walked to his house, turned on lights, home. On the wall, the 3 photographs, 3 generations, same values, same truck, same legacy. But there was space for a 4th, for whoever came next, for whoever earned the right to stand with tools in hand and grease under nails and pride in heart. The space waited, patient, ready, because the work was never finished, the legacy never complete, the chain never ending. It just kept going, one link at a time, one person at a time, one day at a time, building things worth keeping, fixing things worth saving, teaching things worth knowing. The way Walter did, the way Thomas would have, the way James had started over 100 years ago. The Brooks way, simple, honest, true. Steel doesn't rust when it's used, when it's maintained, when it's honored. It lasts forever. And so did they.